What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was kidnapped by Kunoichi? Who wanted him for themselves? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Kyubi, Naruto shouted. I snorted behind the iron bars that confined me to the seal. Don't you snort at me, furball. Come near the gate so I can see you, we need to talk. Naruto said sternly. You dare boss me, Kyubi no Yuko around? I questioned him. Hi, I dare boss you around, furball, now come here so we can talk, I need to tell you some things. Naruto said. I moved towards the iron bars and saw the Gaki was not alone, the Uchiha child was with him too again. When he had found out about me, he had left the hubby and came back to Konoha with the Gaki and friends. Why is the Uchiha here? I asked angrily. Because I am, Sasuke said unemotionally. I wanted him to be here, Kyubi, so he could tell the others what I told you and what we decided. Naruto said. What we decided? We will decide nothing. You have nothing that is worth telling me that I'd have any part in. So leave. I told the two, turning my back to them. Oh no, furball, I'm not leaving until you hear what I have to tell you. Even if you go and hide in the depths of the seal, you will hear me out. Naruto said, pointing to the retreating Kyubi. I snorted at the boy and retreated back into the cage. Naruto, maybe we should go, he isn't going to listen. Sasuke said, looking at Naruto. Naruto looked over at Sasuke, he had nowhere to go, Aniki. He will hear me even if he retreats into the far reaches of the cage. I'm his cage after all and he can't ignore me. Sasuke nodded and looked at the gate. Listen up, furball, Akatsuki is after you. Naruto told the retreating fox. I don't care what an Akatsuki is, you'll beat it with my help. Kyubi said, still walking away. Less than likely, Kyubi, seeing as they have already gotten Shukaku from Gaara. Naruto said. Kyubi stopped moving and looked back towards the two now small forms, surprised at the boy's words. He moved back to the doors of the cell and looked at him. You lie. No one could capture Ichibi. Kyubi spoke, his eyes narrowing from anger. Well, Akatsuki can and did. Naruto said. Then why do you bring the Uchiha here? Kyubi asked. Because my former Aniki is one of them and I want to kill him for what he did. Sasuke said. For the massacre. Kyubi spoke. You know? Both asked, surprised. I can still sense and fell in here even if I can't see. I smelt the blood that night and felt you sadness after that Uchiha. Kyubi said. So will you listen to me now? Naruto asked. Kyubi sat down in front of the cage doors and looked at the two. Speak and I will listen if I find what you say worthwhile. Right, so this is what's going on, furball. Naruto started. He went and told Kyubi what Akatsuki was and what they knew they wanted to do with the bijus they were collecting. Kyubi, after hearing most of his brother biju were captured, became more interested in the boy's words. So you're telling me these Akatsuki remove us biju from our vessels if we're in one and are going to use our power for their own purposes? Kyubi said. Right. Naruto said, nodded. Do we know what that purpose is? Kyubi asked. But we have a feeling it to combine all the biju power so they can take over all the ninja nations. Sasuke said. So what do you propose? Kyubi asks. Help us. Sasuke said. Kyubi snorts at this. Help you? I only help myself and I only help the Gaki so I don't die. So you won't help? Naruto asked. If you come up against this Akatsuki and they try to take me from you, I'll help, but I will not do anything else. You've told me yourself when you brought the Uchiha back you don't need my power, so I won't give you any until you absolutely need me. Kyubi said. One more thing. Sasuke said. Kyubi looked at the boy. We need you to stop trying to take control, and if the time come and Akatsuki try to take you, you'll let Uto fight and keep himself sane. Whatever. Kyubi said and stalked back into the depths of his cage. A couple of months later, Akatsuki managed to kidnap the Naruto, but Konoha had found out sooner than they expected. The group of Chunin and Junin that were Naruto's friends, along with Kakashi and Jiraiya, had chased after the group and located the hideout before they could start the ceremony to extract Kyubi. Sasuke, who now considered Naruto his true little brother, was the one to find and free him. The group then started to fight what was left of the Akatsuki, with Sasuke and Sakura taking on Itachi and Naruto taking on the leader of Akatsuki. Sasuke and Sakura were able to take Itachi down without getting wounded too badly. Naruto had told them to help the others, that his fight between him and the leader was personal, seeing as Naruto was still mad over them almost killing Gaara and would have without Shu Baba's sacrifice. As agreed, Kyuubi lent his power to let Naruto stay on equal ground with the leader, without trying to take control. With a full-powered Kyuubi Rasengan to the leader, Naruto was able to kill him, but in doing so he had to use most of Kyuubi and his own chakra to deal the final death blow. Though still alive, he was barely conscious and he fell to the ground from exhaustion. "Baka Gaki, you used up almost all of our chakra," Kyuubi said, annoyed. "Well Kyuubi, we did good, now we have nothing to worry about," Naruto said out loud. "Oh, I wouldn't say that," a voice hissed above Naruto. Prone form said. With what strength he had left, he managed to open his eyes and see Orochimaru's vile form above him. "Ome," Naruto said before losing consciousness. Sasuke, hearing Naruto say something, looked in his direction to see Orochimaru picking the unconscious teen up. His eyes widened in shock at this. "Orochimaru!" Sasuke shouted, his whole body being covered with the Chidori current as he pulled his katana from its sheath. The man turned to look at his former apprentice and smirked. "Since he took you away from me, I'll just have to deal with him myself," Orochimaru said. The group came running at him from all sides, but in an instant the two sunk into the ground. Sasuke rammed all the Chidori power into the ground with his katana. The ground erupted in multiple places from the Chidori coming back to the surface. The release looked like a lightning storm coming from underground. "Chikasyu, Chokasyu," Sasuke shouted. Sakura came over to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sasuke-kun, we'll find him." Sasuke hair covered his face as he just stood up and started walking away. "Sasuke, where are you going?" Neji asked. Sasuke turned with his Sharingan now activated. "Even as I have to go to every one of his hideouts I know about, I'm bringing my Oto back, just as he did for me." In that instant his Sharingan went from normal to Mangekyo. Everyone gasped in shock and Kakashi just grinned under his mask. "Ma, Sasuke, you can't go alone," Kakashi said lazily. "Come if you like, I don't care, but I'm not wasting another minute here. I don't know what Orochimaru has planned, but I know whatever it is, we need to find Naruto soon." Sasuke replied, concern in his voice. Hi, we know," Shikamaru stated. "Kachiyose no jutsu," Jiraiya said as Gamakichi appeared. "Yo, Arrow Sennin, what do you need?" Gamakichi asked, annoyed. A vein appeared on the back of Jiraiya's head. "I need you to head to Konoha and tell Tsunade that Orochimaru has kidnapped the Gaki. We've killed all of Akatsuki and we're going to head out with Sasuke to find them, go it," Jiraiya said. "Hi, find him soon, Arrow Sennin. Atusan really likes Naruto, as do the rest of us. Oh, and you owe me some major candy for this," Gamakichi said and hopped away. "Can we go now?" Kiba asked, getting on top of Akamaru. "Hi, lead the way, Sasuke," Jiraiya said, looking at where the boy once was, but he was gone. "Where did he go?" "He left already," Sakura said, annoyed they were wasting time. "Nani?" Jiraiya said, surprised. "Well, come on, or we're going to lose him too." With that, the group disappeared into the nearby woods to find Orochimaru and Naruto. Orochimaru was now in one of his many hideouts in the middle of Kumogakure, dealing in utterly defenseless Naruto. "Orochimaru-sama, are you sure about this?" Kabuto said, worried about what his master was about to do. The man had Naruto's seal exposed and was doing a number of hand seals. "Hi, after I'm done with him he'll listen to any order I'll give him. The Kyuubi will live once again, but he will finally be under my control," Orochimaru said, smiling. Inside Naruto's mind, he was having a conversation with Kyuubi. "Kyuubi, what are we going to do? Neither one of us can fight back, and that Bakahabi is going to make us his next great experiment," Naruto asked, flailing his arms wildly in the air with worry. "Kid, we cannot do anything now, we are both too weak to fight back. I have a bad feeling on what he is doing. I know you don't trust me, but I need to see what's going on. I need you to let me take control," Kyuubi said. Naruto looked at the fox, suspicious of his intentions, but looked into his eyes and saw he wasn't hiding anything. He nodded at the fox's requests. As Kyuubi took control and opened Naruto's eyes, he saw the snake doing the hand seals. How in the seven hells did he find that jutsu? Kyuubi questioned himself. His eyes then widened. Those aren't right. It was then Orochimaru finished the hand seals and thrust his hand down onto the exposed seal. Kyuubi was knocked back into Naruto's subconscious, while Naruto in that instant of extreme pain came back into his consciousness. A scream echoed throughout the entire complex. Naruto clothing shredded at the sleeves and legs. His hair grew wilder and his marking became more prominent. His shoes then ripped off his feet and then everything went dead quiet. In the next instant Orochimaru's laugh could be heard. Kabuto left the room quivering with fear of his master and what he might have just accomplished. He was also afraid of what he had done to the boy. He isn't even a boy anymore, he truly is Kyuubi now. Kabuto said to himself and walked down to his room. An hour later Orochimaru came out of the room carrying a body that couldn't be seen because of the lighting. He headed down the hallway to the area he used to keep his prisoners he used for testing. He opened the last cell and placed the body inside. The body moaned and opened an eye to look at him. "Sleep now my pet, in a couple of days we'll start to teach you," Orochimaru said slyly. A growl came from the figure and as he heard Orochimaru leave he finally spoke, "Over our dead body hubby." With that the figure went back to sleep. Inside Naruto's mind he walked down the corridors again to talk to Kyuubi and about what had happened to them. As he reached the room and opened the door he noticed the gate was wide open. Naruto stood there shocked, looking around frantically at where the Kyuubi could be. Suddenly the door closed. Naruto turned around quickly to be faced with himself, but with 9 foxtails swaying behind him. "Who are you?" Naruto asked confused. "Why kid, don't you recognize your own prisoner?" the person asked smirking. "Kyuubi?" But Naruto was even more confused and also scared. "It's the hubby's doing," Kyuubi said, growling in this form. "What did he do to me?" Naruto asked angrily. He tried to look at his body but it was too dark to now see anything but Kyuubi because he was in the only light source in the room. "He messed with the seal. He's trying to put us under his control." Like that will happen even if I took control," Kyuubi stated, annoyed, crossing his arms over his chest. "So what did he do?" Naruto asked, worried. "I don't know yet kid, give me time and I'll be able to tell you later. For now rest and when he comes fight him with everything you have," Kyuubi said. "I don't even need to be asked to do that." Naruto spoke and disappeared from the chamber. Kyuubi smiled at his response and then shook his head, knowing full well what the hubby had done, but how do we undo it? The next day Kabuto entered the cell that the figure had been placed in. He set down some food and left, locking it back. The figure he assumed was sleeping waited till the main door closed before he moved to the food. "What's this junk?" the figure asked. He sniffed the food and snorted, but started eating, seeing as he smelled no trace of poison in it. After he had finished the figure went back to the spot he had been previously and went back to sleep. A couple hours later he heard the door again, but this time the steps sounded like the figure was sliding. "Hubby," the figure growled. My pet, wake up, it's time to train you." Orochimaru cooed, trying to wake the figure from its sleep. "No way in hell Teme," the figure thought. That jutsu must have put more strain on him than I thought." "Oh, no matter, I have months to wait," Orochimaru said, annoyed, and walked away. "What am I going to do?" the figure worried, but then he felt calmed by a feeling that someone was coming to help. It had now been 2 weeks since Naruto's kidnapping and everyone was growing worried, on top of Sasuke not been in a good mood from the numerous hideout that were abandoned and then destroyed by him in anger. The only person he allowed to get close to him was Sakura. She seemed to be the only one that could calm down his fits of rage over not finding his so-called Oto. Today he kept on speeding up. "Sasuke-kun, you need to slow down," Sakura spoke to the figure far in front of them. Sasuke looked behind him to see a number of the group lagging behind. "This is the last one if he isn't here." "He'll be there Sasuke, but we can't keep up with your speed," Shikamaru said lazily. Sasuke finally slowed down to get back with the others. "Sasuke-kun, he'll be there, I know it," Hinata said softly. Sasuke looked at her. "How Hinata? Every hideout we've been to so far he's not been there, so how do you know he'll be at this one?" "I just have a feeling Naruto-kun will be at this one," Hinata said with a smile. Sasuke was confused by her answer until he thought of the reason she had this faith. "Hinata, do you like the dope?" Hinata's face grew red and she put her head down and nodded. "That's good to hear, he needs someone since he's been all alone for so long." Sasuke then moved to the front of the group. Hinata looked up at his retreating form, shocked by his words, but in an instant he was on the ground looking for the hidden entrance. "Now where is it?" Sasuke said, annoyed, looking around. "Sasuke, what are you looking for?" Choji questioned as the rest dropped down beside of him. "There should be a hidden lever here somewhere to open the hidden entrance." Sasuke replied. Kiba hopped off the Akamaru and sat down on a nearby rock to rest a bit, but in that instant the entrance opened. Huh? How'd that happen? Ino asked surprised. Kiba did it, Shino replied calmly. Sasuke snorted. Yeah, now I remember the hidden lever here is a rock here. Right then Team Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma will come with me. Team Guy, I want you to stay here in case they try to escape. Jiraiya said. Hi, everyone responded. All right, let go. Jiraiya spoke. The groups then moved into the opening as Team Guy stayed out. As they moved further and further in the place, it kept on growing darker. I can't see a thing. Ino whispered, a hint of fear in her voice. Just feel the wall. There are no traps in this hideout because only a select few know about it and Orochimaru didn't think he needed any. Sasuke said. That's good to know, I really don't want to deal with any more Mendoku's traps. Shikamaru said. As they went further they noticed that there was a door with light coming from it. Kabuto's room. Sasuke snarled at the light. He went over opened the door to see the silver-haired man sitting in a chair looking at the group. So Sasuke-kun finally found us? Kabuto asked smiling. Where is Naruto? Sasuke asked angrily, holding his katana tip at the mon's throat. Kabuto frowned at this question. The Naruto you once knew is no more. Orochimaru did. Kabuto was interrupted by being pulled out of his chair and being held in the air by a very angry Sakura. He didn't ask you about that, we just want to take Naruto home. Now where is he? Sakura asked, glaring at the silver-haired man. Sasuke stood there shocked at Sakura's actions and words. Kabuto looked in her eyes and gulped. She reminds me so much of Tsunade-sama. I'll show you, Kabuto said calmly. Sakura put the man down only to have him try to attack her. In an instant he was dead from Shikamaru's cage Kubashibari no Jutsu. Great Shikamaru, now how do we find Naruto? Ino said, smacking him upside the head. Shikamaru rubbed the back of his bruised head. Mendoku's, he'll be where they hold their prisoners. He's right, Kakashi said. Jiraiya, you and I will head out to find Orochimaru. Sasuke, you take the others and show them where the cells are. Find Naruto and get him out of here. Sasuke said, I'm coming with you too. He did the wrong thing taking my Oto-Uto. This is personal. Sasuke, I don't think. Kakashi started but was stopped by Jiraiya's hand being placed on his shoulder. Kakashi looked at him and Jiraiya shook his head. The cells are on our way to Orochimaru's room. I'll show them the door and they can do the rest. We're going to deal with Orochimaru. Sasuke told them. Sasuke-kun? Sakura questioned, worried. Sasuke looked over and Sakura and smirked. He's not going to take me again, Sakura, and he's not going to get away from kidnapping the dope. I'll be fine, I promise. Sakura nodded at his statement and the group headed out, but not before Sasuke set Kabuto's body on fire just to make sure he really was dead. The group was now running down the dark halls trying to keep up with Sasuke's pace. Suddenly he stopped with a number of the group running into each other. What the hell? Sasuke! Kiba shouted as Akamaru rammed into his back. There, Sasuke said and pointed to a large red door to the group's right, that the prisoner holding cell area. Find him and get him out of here. Don't come back inside. No way, we're not going to leave you inside here. Ino said. Ino, Kakashi and I will be with him. Do as he said and don't come back in here once you get Naruto out. Stay out there until we come to get you. If we're not out in 2 hours, head back to Konoha with Naruto. Jiraiya spoke. The teens looked at the two adults worried, but nodded at their orders. Good, Sasuke, show us to my annoying former teammate's room. Jiraiya then said. With that the three left the group. Shikamaru then turned to the door. Let go and get Naruto out of here and do what Jiraiya-sama said. Shikamaru spoke as he entered the room. The other nodded at his statement and followed him into the room. As they entered, the group was shocked at what they saw. The room was wall-to-wall cells and it looked like it went on for miles. Some cells even had the remains of dead prisoners still in them. Ah man, this reeks, Kiba said, covering his nose. Akamaru whined in agreement. Kiba, you and Akamaru stand guard by the door since the smell is overpowering to your senses. Shikamaru said. Gladly, Kiba stated and moved back out the door with Akamaru. As the group moved further in, they split up so they could each take a side and search inside the cells, but after a while they were still not even halfway to the end and still no Naruto. Hinata, use your Byakugan and find him. Shikamaru ordered. Hi, Byakugan, Hinata said, activating her Kekkei Genkai. The veins around her eyes strained as she looked through each cell. Then she saw a form huddled and breathing slowly like it was sleeping. "I found him," she shouted excitedly, smiling, and started running down the hall into the darkness. "Hinata, Chiyoto Mat," Sakura said, raising her arm to stop here, but it was too late. She had disappeared into the dark corridor. As the end of the corridor, in the last cell to the right, was the breathing form she believed was Naruto. As she grew closer, she disengaged her Byakugan. She hit the cell's lock with a chakra-enforced Jukin strike and caused the door to break. "Naruto-kun?" Hinata questioned the figure in the cell. It started to move and finally opened its eyes, but what Hinata saw wasn't the sky-blue eyes of Naruto, but blood-red slits looking up at her with grogginess. The figure, seeing someone in his cell, fully awoke and got into a defensive stance and started to growl. "Hubby, we will tell you now, we will not go with you," the figure said. "Naruto-kun?" Hinata questioned the figure in the shadows. She stepped into the light so he could see them. "A girl, we know her, but we don't remember." "Oh, what did that hubby do to us? Remember?" a whisper said in the figure's head. "Who are you?" the figure questioned. "Naruto-kun, it's me, Hinata. Don't you remember?" Hinata asked, concerned. The figure Hinata believed to be Naruto stepped out of the shadows, and Hinata gasped at what she saw. There was not Naruto, but a golden kyubi. Its head stopped at her chest. The fox looked up at her, eyeing her with suspicion. It might be the hubby in a henge. "We do not remember you," the fox said, confused, and shook its head. "He's confused. Oh, Naruto-kun, what did he do to you?" Hinata thought sadly. "Kid, it's the girl from the Chunin exams, the one you made the promise to after her cousin nearly killed her. Remember, Kit?" the voice said louder in the boy's head. While the fox had his eyes shut, Hinata moved closer to him. The fox, though, heard the movement and looked up to see her a few feet from him. He resumed his defensive stance and growled at her. Suddenly Hinata stuck out her hand. "Shoo, it's okay, Naruto-kun, we're here to take you home," Hinata said calmly, hoping it would reassure him. "Home?" the fox questioned, tilting its head to the side, confused. "Hi, back to Konoha, to your friends and family," Hinata said kindly, smiling. The fox sniffed the air and caught a smell that was familiar to him. He slowly came up to the girl and started to sniff her hand. He then looked up at her with sky-blue eyes, now knowing who she was. "Ta?" the fox asked, finally recognizing her. Tears came out of Hinata's eyes as he finally recognized her. She bent down and engulfed him into a hug. He then recognized what he was and started to struggle to get free. Naruto now said, trying to pull out of her hug. "Huh?" Hinata questioned, letting go of the struggling fox. "Need to change," Naruto said, still struggling with his words. In an instant a cloud of smoke engulfed him and he was now in his human form. This, though, was not the normal form he had when he was using Kyuubi's power. This was even more feral looking. His hair was slightly longer than before, the tips of his hair stopping at his shoulders, with his hitaate was keeping his bangs from covering his eyes. His eyes stayed sky blue, but they were slits instead of round. One of his canines was hanging out of his mouth, but Hinata knew if he opened his mouth they'd all be long like the one she saw. His whisker marks were deeper and thicker than they normally were, almost to the point they were red in color, and his pants were ripped and started at his knees. Now, with his shoes gone, his feet were sporting sharp claw-like nails, and if he stood he would stand only on the balls of his feet and not the entire foot. His shirt had been ripped at the sleeves, and his arms now had crimson fur that continued to his hands that looked like Kyuubi's paws when Naruto was surrounded by his chakra. Hinata, seeing this, took his hands into hers, not afraid of his looks. She knew it was Naruto. Naruto looked down as she grabbed his hands and saw them. He then became wide-eyed at how they looked. Instantly he jerked them out of Hinata's grasp and withdrew in the back of the cell. "Naruto-kun, come on, we need to get you out of here," Hinata said, worried at his reaction. But she heard no movement. She carefully and cautiously moved to the back of the cell where Naruto figure now was. It was so dark in the back of the cell she had to activate her Byakugan to see him. She then spotted him huddled in the corner, shaking, his arms crossed in front of him and his head buried. His claws were digging into his arms and causing blood to seep out. "Naruto-kun, please stop," Hinata said, upset that he was hurting himself. Naruto just shook his head. "Won't leave. Demo, Naruto-kun, we need to go," Hinata said softly, trying to coax him to leave. "Bakemono, won't leave," Naruto said, moving his face a little to look at his hand. Pause again. Oh Naruto-kun, you're not a bakemono. Hinata thought. Naruto-kun, I'm sure Hokage-sama will be able to help, but we need to head out of here. Hinata said. Naruto just shook his head. He's not going to go out with everyone seeing what Orochimaru has done to him. Hinata thought. It was then Hinata spotted a skeleton in the corner with a long ragged hooded cloak on it. She moved over to the skeleton. Sir, forgive me, but I need to use your cloak. My friend is in need of it. Hinata said, bowing before removing the cloak from the skeleton. She then moved over to Naruto. Naruto-kun here. She handed the cloak to Naruto. He took it and snorted, death. I know, but I'll have to do for right now. Hinata said sadly. He stood up and placed it on him. The cloak was very large and long and covered all of him up. Can we go now? Hinata asked and Naruto nodded. The two then headed out of the cell to meet the others and head out of the evil place. As the two went down the corridor back to where Hinata knows the others were, she could feel Naruto tense up. It's alright, it's just our friends. We all came looking for you. Hinata explained to him calmly. This caused Naruto to relax. Demo, Inu. Hi, remember Kiba-kun is an Inuzuka and they used Inu to help them. His is Akamaru. They are friends, not enemies. The only enemy you need to worry about is Orochimaru. Hinata said. Naruto growled at the name, hubby. Hi, hubby. But Jiraiya-sama, Kakashi-sensei, and Sasuke-kun went to deal with him. Hinata explained. Iniki went? Naruto questioned. You remember Sasuke-kun? Hinata asked, surprised. Naruto nodded. Well, at least he's not completely lost to us and he seems to be remembering things, but slowly. Hinata thought. They finally got back to the others. Hinata, you found him? Shino said. Hinata nodded at his question. Kanchu and Shika too? Naruto asked, confused. Hi, Naruto-kun. Let's go everyone. Hinata then said, and the two started to walk out of the room. The others looked at Naruto questioning why he was wearing the hooded cloak, but didn't say anything and followed the two out of the room. At the entrance, Kiba and Akamaru saw them coming and moved out of the way. Good to see you alive, loudmouth. Kiba said, hitting Naruto on his shoulder. Naruto though took this as an act of aggression, growled and in a split second had pinned Kiba into the wall with his arm. In an instant Hinata was by Naruto. Naruto-kun, he wasn't trying to hurt you. It's okay, Hinata said, pulling on his arm. Naruto dropped the scared boy and turned to look at Hinata with sadness in his eyes. He hung his head knowing he hurt one of his friends, but couldn't help it. Hinata engulfed him in a hug to reassure him. Kiba-kun, I'm sorry he did that, but… Hinata said and looked at Naruto. He just looked at her, seeing what she'd do. She sighed and turned, still holding Naruto's arm, and led him to the entrance. The others looked at Kiba, who was holding his neck from where Naruto had pinned him. What was that all about? Ino asked, confused. I don't know, but something's not right and only those two know. Shikamaru said, knowing something wasn't right. He called Shino a Kanchu, Miyashika, and he was highly aggressive to Kiba's friendly hit. He's acting almost as if he is a kitsune. Shikamaru though, and his eyes widened in realization. What if that's what Orochimaru did? Shikamaru questioned himself, but Choji overheard him. Shikamaru? Choji questioned his friend's unusual statement. I don't know, Choji, but we might have been too late to save him. Shikamaru said, worried. But Shikamaru, he right there with Hinata. How could we have been too late? Choji said, pointing to the retreating forms. It's just, never mind. Shikamaru said, shaking his head. I'll have to tell Kakashi-sensei and Jiraiya-sama when they come back. That's the only way I'll know if my theory is correct, unless I can get Hinata or Naruto to tell me. Shikamaru thought. The others started to follow the two back towards the entrance. As they reached outside, Teen Guy was there waiting. Lee was already in a speech about the fire of youth finally finding Naruto. While in the midst of his speech, Hinata had moved Naruto over to a tree's shade for him to rest. She could tell he was still tired from whatever Orochimaru had done to him. As they were sitting there, Hinata reached into her pouch and pulled out an onigiri and handed it to Naruto. Naruto took it and smiled. I remember these. You make them, and I thought it was strange for me to be eating myself, but they are really good. Naruto said as he bit into it. Hinata said in confirmation of his statement. It was then Shikamaru stepped over to the two and looked at Hinata and then Naruto. I don't know if you'll answer my question, but did he let Kyubi loose? Shikamaru questioned. Naruto didn't look up at Shikamaru. Shikamaru, I don't know what he did to me, but it's something like what you ask. He then looked up at the teen and Shikamaru saw the changes that had occurred to Naruto's features. He frowned at his friend's appearance. Su Mendoku's, are you in control or is Kyubi? Naruto looked down. I'm in control Shikamaru, but I am confused over many things right now. It takes me a few minutes after seeing someone to recognize them. That's why I attacked Kiba. Shikamaru looked upon Naruto sadly. Shikamaru-kun, he's tired for whatever Orochimaru did to him. Could we wait for Jiraiya-sama and Kakashi-sensei to come back to explain further? Hinata asked. And Aniki. Naruto said, his eyes drooping as he tried to keep them open. Hi Naruto-kun, and Sasuke-kun. We'll wait for all of them, Hinata said. With that, Naruto rested his head on Hinata's shoulder and instantly fell asleep. He remembers Sasuke? Shikamaru asked, surprised. He remembers as Aniki, I don't know, but he might also remember Iruka-sensei since he's like a Tucson to him. But I'll only know once we get back to Konoha, Hinata said, blushing a little from Naruto's contact. With that, Shikamaru left the two. About 2 hours later, the group was getting ready to head back to Konoha with Naruto, when they heard sounds coming from the entrance. Everyone went to hide except for Naruto, who had Hinata tugging on his covered arm. Naruto-kun, we must hide. What if it's Orochimaru? Hinata asked, worried. Ukami, Gamma, and Aniki, Naruto said to her. Hinata looked at him shocked. You can smell then? Naruto nodded and he moved closer to the entrance. Hinata let go of his arm. It was then the three emerged from the entrance with Sasuke having in a bag hanging from his side. Naruto smelled the air and recognized the smell coming from the bag. Hubby, Naruto growled. Sasuke smirked at Naruto's answer. Hi, Naruto, I couldn't let him live after he kidnapped my Oto-Oto. Now could I? Sasuke stuck out his hand to shake Naruto's, but Naruto just looked down at it. Hinata looked at what Sasuke wanted Naruto to do, but knew he wouldn't. Well, dope, you going to shake or not? Sasuke questioned, getting annoyed. Naruto shook his head and started to back away. Everyone was surprised at his actions, but Hinata looked at him sadly. Jiraiya-sama, Kakashi-sensei, could we talk to you privately? Shikamaru-kun, you too, since you know, Hinata said. The two eyed the group and nodded. The five moved off away from the other so they wouldn't hear. Knowing they were away from the group, Hinata finally stopped. Alright, what's going on and what's with the cloak, Gaki? Jiraiya asked, annoyed. And why wouldn't you shake Sasuke's hand? Kakashi questioned further. Hinata looked over at Naruto. You need to show them. But Naruto just stood there. Naruto-kun, I know and I'm alright with it, they know about it and have never rejected you. So why would they because of what he did to you? Shikamaru saw you and is okay with it too, so please show them. I alone can't help you. I know you're right, Hinata, but I can't even call myself human anymore. Naruto said, sounding happy. He's covering his pain up. All four thought at the sound of his voice. Jiraiya was then remembered what the boy had said a second ago. What did that Teme do to him? Naruto, she right, they need to know, and so do you other friends back there. You're eventually going to have to show Tsunade-sama too so she can help you, so just show them. Shikamaru said. Naruto just looked at his friends. Kit, Kyubi, Naruto said calmly. The others were shocked that the Kyubi was able to talk to the teen freely now and they grew concerned over this. Kid, do as they say, I don't know how to fully help you. Only with your Hokage and your sensei's help can we figure out how to change you back. It'll be all right, Kid. Kyubi reassured him. Why are you helping me? Naruto, though, to him confused. I'll explain later, just do what I ask for now, Kyubi said. Naruto nodded as he looked at the others. Kyubi coaxed me into showing you. Hinata nodded at his words. I don't know why he's helping us, but if I ever meet Kyubi I'll have to thank him. Naruto took his paws covered by the cloak's fabric and took the hood off his head. The two adults gasped at how the boy looked. Kid, you must show them everything. Kyubi growled in annoyance. Come on, Kyubi, haven't I showed them enough? Naruto whined. Naruto, what's he telling you? Kakashi asked, concerned. He wants me to remove the cloak, but I don't want to. Naruto starting to pout. Naruto looked down at his paws that were covered by the cloak. Hinata took his hand in hers and this caused him to look at her. They can't help you if you don't show them, Hinata told him. He looked at her staring deeply into her silver eyes and sighed. Demo, they'll be afraid. Naruto said, worried, taking his gaze off of her and looking at the ground. Gaki, I've seen you go into Four Tails mode where you don't recognize anyone, so nothing could shock me. Jiraiya said. Naruto winced at remembering how his sensei looked when he finally came to, but then smiled at his words. Four Tails mode it normal compared to this arrow senin. Hinata smiled seeing he remember who the two were. Naruto then took the cloak and completely removed it, handing it to Hinata. The two adults were shocked at the boy, especially his hands or paws as they were now. Oh Gaki, Jiraiya said sadly looking upon the boy. Told you, you spoke too soon. Now do you understand why I wouldn't shake Sasuke's hand? Naruto said, taking a paw through his hair. Naruto then looked a seat on a nearby rock. Do you know what he did? Kakashi asked. I don't know much, only what Kyuubi told me. Naruto said. What has Kyuubi told you and why is he helping? Kakashi asked, surprised. The other guys were surprised at Naruto's news too. Truly, he still hasn't told me why he's trying to help me, and all he's told me is that the hubby messed with the seal. I'm going to get the story out of him sometime here soon. Naruto said, annoyed he was as clueless as the others were. Yeah, I'll tell you as soon as you let the others see Kit. Kyuubi said. Naruto growled at his words, since when am I your Kit? Kyuubi snorted at his words. Oh, and I wouldn't tell then about me being out right now, Kit. Like I'm that much of a baka. Naruto told him, but Kyuubi said nothing to his words. I hate you. You know that, right? Naruto could hear Kyuubi snicker in his mind. The others just looked at Naruto's actions because they didn't know what Kyuubi was saying to him, but knew it wasn't good when a vein protruded out of Naruto's head. Baka furball. Naruto mumbled. Anyways, he said the hubby tried to put us under his control. Messed with the seal, but I didn't know what it did to us till today. I've mostly been sleeping. Kabuto would come and bring me food, and I'd act like I was asleep. If the hubby came and saw this, he'd leave waiting for me to wake up. Though whatever he did to me took a lot out of me. Baka. He then looked up at his senseis. Do you think there's a way to change me back? I can't go back to Konoha like this. They thought I was the Kyuubi before with this. Naruto stopped and looked at his paws. Hinata sat beside of him and took his paws. The ones that have known won't see you any differently. Hinata assured him. Kyuubi? Naruto questioned, looking up into the sky. Nani, Kit? Kyuubi asked. What do I do now? Naruto asked, unsure what to do now. The three watched as Naruto conversed with Kyuubi. Do what you feel is right, Kit. I will not force you to make that decision, but I'll tell you they've known of me because of Akatsuki. Why with what the hubby did is it any different? That and I won't tell you about what happened to us until you do. Kyuubi said. Oh, and how is that not forcing me to tell them? Naruto asked, annoyed at the fox's words. Humph. Kyuubi said. Naruto-kun? Hinata questioned. He said I should choose if I tell them or not, but then he said that he won't tell me what's fully happened until I tell them. Teme Kitsune. Naruto said and sighed and looked at his paws again. Near them was a lake. He got up and went over to look himself over completely. He just stared at the lake sadly and shook his head. He took his paws and splashed his face to remove some of the dirt that was on his face. They all stood in silence for a couple of minutes waiting for Naruto to make his decision. After about 5 minutes he turned to look at the others with the determined spark in his eyes. You've decided, Jiraiya said with a smile. Naruto nodded. Hinata, I like you to hold on to my cloak for now. I'll need it when we get close to any villages, especially Konoha. Hinata nodded. Well, are we going to go and tell them, or are we going to stand here all day? Shikamaru asked, annoyed they were still there. With that the group started to head back to the others. As the five headed back, Akamaru was the first to hear them. They're coming back, Kiba told the others. They all turned to where the five had left. Jiraiya and Kakashi were the first to exit from the woods, followed by Shikamaru and Hinata, but Naruto didn't emerge. Naruto-kun, it'll be alright, Hinata said as she noticed he hadn't followed her. Maybe we should explain first? Kakashi said, looking at the confused group. Explain what, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked. About what Orochimaru did to Naruto. Jiraiya said. What did he do to Otouto? Sasuke growled angrily. Sasuke-kun, please, Hinata said, because of his interruption. Hump, Sasuke responded. Anyways, from what Naruto told us, Orochimaru messed with the seal that hold Kyuubi. Kakashi said. Nani? Everyone shouted. This caused Naruto to flinch because now his ears were very sensitive to sound. Anyway, whatever he did caused some slight changes. Jiraiya said. What do you mean by slight changes? Tenten said. Gaki come out. Jiraiya said. Naruto shifted where he was standing. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Mendokus, Shikamaru said and went to pull Naruto out from him hiding spot. Hey Shikamaru, what are you doing? Naruto asked loudly while being pulled. Everyone gasped at his appearance. He started to rub the back of his head, smiling at the group. Hi guys, Naruto said happily, waving his paw at them. Sakura said on the verge of tears, holding her hands to her mouth. No one could believe what the vile Sannin had done to the boy. Naruto dropped his paw and looked at the others. He shifted because of the silence that was happening. Guys? Naruto questioned, smiling, though Hinata could tell he was getting uncomfortable. Naruto? Sasuke questioned, shocked. Naruto nodded his head, smiling. Chikizyu, Chikizyu. Sasuke said loudly and caused Naruto to flinch at his raised voice. Teme, keep it down, Naruto said, holding his paws over his ears. Nani? Sasuke said, annoyed. Naruto looked at him, also annoyed. I said keep it down, Teme. You're too loud for my ears. Sasuke was shocked at this news and grew angry at what Orochimaru had done to him. Naruto, surprised at feeling Sasuke's anger, thought he had done something wrong. What did I do? Nothing, dope. Sasuke said, annoyed. Demo. Naruto said, confused. You didn't do anything wrong, Oto. Sasuke said angrily as he tried to assure him everything was okay. Oh good, Naruto said, smiling again. 1 second he stood smiling and the next he was falling to the ground with the smiling still on his face. Oto. Sasuke shouted and he rushed forward and grabbed him before he could hit the ground. Jiraiya came over and checked him out. He's just tired from everything, he'll be alright with some rest. Jiraiya explained to the others. Can we change him back? Neji asked, looking at Naruto. I don't know, hopefully Tsunade will know something. Also Kyuubi seemed to know more than Naruto, so he might be able to help too. He is the reason he showed us and you. Jiraiya said. Inside Naruto's mind he was walking to the room that housed the free Kyuubi and he wanted answers. As he reached the door they opened to reveal himself, but Naruto knew that it is Kyuubi. Wondered when you get here. Kyuubi said, smiling. Yeah, well, you have a lot of explaining to do and it starts right now. Like what did he do to me? Us. Kyuubi corrected him. Us? Naruto asked, confused. Hi, us. He messed with the seal kit and it's fused our personalities, sort of. Kyuubi said, sounding annoyed. So that's why you're being so nice now and trying to help me. It's because you have emotions now? Naruto asked, surprised. Please kid, I had these emotions before I was sealed in you. It's just the ones you use most of the time, I rarely ever showed. Kyuubi said. So then why are you helping me and why are you calling me kid now? Naruto asked. With the jutsu the hubby did, it sort of also caused me to see what you've gone through all these years. I can say I'm impressed, kid, that you never let me out and just destroy that village for what they put you through. Kyuubi said. Naruto frowned at his words. Well, if you saw then you know I would never do that. True. So now what to do about what the hubby did? Kyuubi said. He went on to explain further to Naruto what all had happened and what the jutsu had caused. Back outside, Naruto's friends were worried about him. Kyuubi is helping him? Ino questioned. Hi, though we're still unsure why he's being helpful, but for right now we're not complaining. Jiraiya said. What do you mean? Shino asked. Shino-kun, he was very reluctant to tell or even show anyone. It took Kyuubi's coaxing to even take the cloak off I had put on him. When we were inside it took me a good number of minutes to get him to even let me touch him after he shifted forms. Hinata said. Shifted forms? Tenten asked. In that instant a cloud of smoke engulfed the boy's humanoid form and the golden Kyuubi. It was then the form woke up, red eyes staring at them. Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. He's still asleep, the fox said. The adult knew what this meant and got in front of the teens. Hinata though walked in front of them. Are you Kyuubi then? She questioned calmly. The fox nodded as several gasps were heard. The fox smirked at their fear. Though I love to see you all afraid of me, I mean you no harm, I just want to help the kid. I know a bit more than he does, but still my knowledge is little of the jutsu the hubby used on us. Why are you helping us? Kakashi asked. I have already told him what had happened. But the jutsu it seems has melded together our personalities and it's mellowed me out and made him more on the edge so to speak. That and I have grown to like the kid, just don't tell him I told you that. Kyubi said annoyed at that information. So, you want to help? Do you know the jutsu's name? Jiraiya asked still on edge with the Kyubi being in control. I know what he was trying to do, but what he was trying to do and what he did was two different things. Kyubi said showing a smirk. So what was he trying to do? Lee asked. He was trying to do a jutsu called Zinrui no Kisu. Kyubi said. I've never heard of that. Sasuke said wondering if the Kyubi was being truthful to them. I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't. The jutsu is ancient from when Konoha was first starting. It basically takes all the humanity out of the creature it's used on and make them an obedient servant to the performer of the jutsu. Kyubi said. But you said he didn't do it right? So what did he do? Sakura said. That I don't know. I saw the last few hand seals and knew what he was doing, but the last two were wrong. So, either he did them wrong on purpose, which I seriously doubt, or wherever he got the translation from was wrong. From what I can tell it basically kept the kid's mind the way it was, well sort of. Kyubi said. Sort of? What do you mean by sort of? Kiba asked. I'm sure you saw what happened earlier when you hit Naruto on the back. Even though it was an act of friends he took it as an aggression of an Inu to a kitsune. That's why he attacked you. Kyubi said. So what are you saying? That his mind has progressed to some sort of primal form? Neji asked. Again sort of, my mind and his have merged along with the looks of his body. I need to talk to the Hokage for sure because once I tell her the last couple of hand seals she might be able to help him. For now please be patient with him. As you can see he is very emotional right now. I believe this is a side effect of the incorrect hand seals. I know you all can tell he's trying to cover it up, so none of you worry about him. He's very good at that you know. I didn't want to tell him about the transformation the jutsu caused and I think I have him even more angry at me than usual, though it wouldn't be the first time. Kyubi said smiling. With that Naruto's body was engulfed in smoke again and his humanoid form was asleep in front of them. The group was left in silence with Kyubi's departure. So what now? Ino asked unsure what to do. We'll head home and hope Tsunade-sensei can help him with Kyubi's knowledge. Sakura said. Right. Kakashi said nodding to them. Can't we let him sleep for a little bit more though? Hinata asked looking over at Naruto. It'll take us a couple of days to get back home. For now I'll carry him till he wakes up. Kakashi said. Kakashi I think this might be getting to be a habit for you. Jiraiya said smiling. Kakashi chuckled at his words as the ones that knew what the Sannin was talking about smiled. Kakashi went over and picked Naruto up and put him on his back. The group had been traveling for a number of hours now and Naruto had still yet to wake up. Finally Kakashi heard the teen moan and whistled to signal for Jiraiya and the others to stop. The group dropped from the trees as Naruto rubbed his head. Man, that was a really bad dream. Naruto said, but then noticed his hands felt different. He then opened his eyes and saw his paws. Ah man, it wasn't a dream. I'm afraid not, Naruto. Kakashi said as he placed the boy down. I wish it was though. Naruto said sliding off Kakashi's back to stand up. So do we, Gaki, but at least you're alive and still yourself. Jiraiya said. Naruto smiled at him. Right arrow Sennin. Naruto-kun. Hinata said worried. Are you alright now, Naruto? Sakura asked. Naruto looked at her. Sure, why wouldn't I be? The group looked at him worried. Now seeing what Kyubi had meant earlier. Baka because of what happened. Kiba said annoyed he was hiding what he really felt from his friends. Oh, it's okay. Naruto said looking around. So we're about 2 days out still, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Yeah. How did you know? Naruto looked around. Well, we just entered Konoha Forest, so that how? Dope, how did you know that? You've been asleep most of the trip? Sasuke asked. The woods seem familiar. Huh, what? Naruto said, his eyes glazing over for a moment. Naruto what? Choji asked. Oh, Kyubi said, I recognize where we are because of him. Can we stay here? I need to go somewhere nearby. Naruto said. Jiraiya and Kakashi looked at each other suspicious of his words, but nodded. Alright Gaki, but don't go too far. Jiraiya said. Right. Naruto said and started to walk away, but stopped when someone spoke. Naruto-kun. Hinata stopped though afraid he wouldn't want her company. You can come if you wish. Naruto said smiling at her and resumed walking. Hinata nodded and the others nodded at her too. With that, the Hinata headed out to catch up to Naruto into the thick woods. Naruto-kun, where are we going? Hinata asked, confused, as she had been following the boy for a long while now. Actually, I don't know, I'm just following Kyuubi's directions really. Naruto said, sounding equally confused. Oh, Hinata said, not questioning him further. Soon Naruto stopped at the edge of a rather large cave. Naruto-kun? In that instant Naruto shifted forms and was in his golden Kyuubi form with red eyes. Kyuubi-sama? Hinata asked, confused. Come child, I will show you why I attacked. Kyuubi stated, a hint of sadness in his voice. With that he placed Hinata on his back and the two went inside. Is Naruto-kun still awake? Hinata questioned, still fearing Kyuubi a little bit. Hi, he will hear what I tell you in just a little bit. Kyuubi said, hearing the hint of fear in her voice. Hinata nodded at his words. In the middle of the cave Hinata noticed a number of ninja weapons littering the area and a number of skeletons too. She gasped, as she was the Hiteate, they were Konohas. Do you understand yet? Kyuubi asked at her reaction. Gomen Kyuubi-sama, but I don't. Hinata told him. Then let's go further, shall we? Those were the ones I caught fleeing from what they had done. Kyuubi said, hate seeping from his voice. They finally reached the end of the vast cave and there a hole was made to let sun in there. The sun shone on 4 skeletons, but they were not human. Were they? Hinata asked, figuring out who they were. Kyuubi nodded, this is why I attacked. I don't know why those ninjas attacked my mate and kits, but they were harmless. My mate was only ate 3 tails and the kits were only 1 tails. No harm to anyone, but they mercilessly killed them. Kyuubi said, anger radiating off of him. Hinata leaned down and hugged the fox around his neck. I'm so sorry, Kyuubi. She said as tears came from her eyes and dropped on the back of his neck. Kyuubi smiled, a genuine smile at her kindness. Kid, I like her, she very caring for others. Kyuubi thought to Naruto. I thought you hated everything? Naruto questioned, merging, remember? I might have been full of hate for most of the time, but I know what love is and this was what caused me to lose it. Kyuubi said to him sadly. Naruto didn't respond to his words. Hinata noticed some lavenders growing in the lighted area. She got off of Kyuubi and picked them and placed them by the fox skeletons and bowed. Kyuubi watched this, shocked a human would show such kindness to the dead, especially dead animals. She then came back and got back on Kyuubi and the two left as the existed Kyuubi gave control back to Naruto. Say Hinata, Naruto said, breaking the silence. Naruto-kun? Hinata questioned. Would you like to stay up there for a little bit? Naruto asked, tilting his head so his sky blue eyes could eye her and smile. Hi, that would be nice, Naruto-kun. Hinata said, smiling down at him. Naruto nodded. Alright, let's head back to the others, we only have an hour of daylight left. As Naruto was bounded off back to their campsite, even though they were still far away from camp, he could already smell the food being prepared. Smells good, Naruto said hungrily. Naruto-kun? Hinata questioned at the way he spoke. Someone's fixing fish and ramen, Hinata. Naruto said, happily licking his muzzle. I say the boys got the fish and the ramen is probably from the bunch Sasuke bought for you, knowing you'd want some once we found you. Hinata said, smiling. Aniki. Naruto said, smiling at Sasuke's act. When they were a couple feet from camp, Naruto let Hinata off and changed back into his humanoid form. Again Naruto looked at his paws, but Hinata grabbed one of his paws and pulled him towards camp. Hinata. Kiba said, happy to see you're back safe, as she entered. So where did you go, Gaki? Jiraiya asked, wondering why they were gone for most of the day. To Kyuubi's old den, Naruto said casually. His den? It's near here? Kakashi said, surprised at his words. Naruto nodded. Naruto, what wrong? Sakura asked, seeing the look in his eye. We know why he attacked. Naruto said, sitting down on a nearby log by the campfire. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at him surprised. Well, Ino broke the silence since no one else would. We killed his mate and kits. Hinata said sadly, answering the question. Nani? Tenten asked, confused. Some Konoha nin's remains are in the cave. Kyuubi said he killed them while they were trying to escape. They killed his mate and her 3 kits, that's why he attacked. He was angry over the death of his family that we had caused. Naruto said, looking blankly into the fire. I don't understand, there shouldn't have been any Konoha nin's out this far during that time. I mean, we're right on the edge of Ricefield country. So, But it was then Kakashi stopped when he realized what he had just said. They weren't Konoha ninjas, Shikamaru said, figuring out too what Kakashi just had. Nani? The others said, still confused. Think of what Kakashi-sensei just said. There should be any ninjas this far out because of Otto, so then. Shikamaru said, stopping to let them figure it out. It was the hubby doing. Naruto said, growing angry, letting red chakra whip off of him violently. Kyubi too was angered by the deception the man had done to him. He had caused the deaths of thousands of innocent ninjas and caused his container's life to be extremely hard. That caused everyone the shiver at the amount of killing intent coming off of him. Naruto. Sasuke said, worried at what his friend was doing. Naruto, hearing his name, looked at him surprised and the chakra receded. Huh? Nani? Naruto, did you know what you were doing just now? Sakura questioned the confused boy. Naruto smiled at her. What did I do? They all shook their heads at him, being clueless as to what he had done. Right, let's eat, shall we? Kakashi said, trying to change the mood. With that, the group surrounded the fire that had been made to start eating. There were a number of fish on sticks being cooked and a bowl of instant ramen for Naruto. They all started to eat as Naruto went to grab the ramen cup and smiled. We'll at least all have something good today. Naruto thought happily as he broke the hashi in half, but as he started to eat he noticed he couldn't hold the hashi in his new paws. He struggled for a number of minutes, but still couldn't do it. He sighed sadly and quietly got up. I am going to go for a walk, Naruto said, not wanting to arise suspicious of why he was really leaving. The others, who had been eating, heard him and looked at his retreating form. He didn't even touch his ramen. Choji said, confused why he didn't eat. He couldn't. Kakashi told him, sadness seen in his viable eye. Huh? Ino questioned, not understanding. His paws, they wouldn't allow him to hold the hashi, so he can't eat it. Kakashi explained. Hearing this, the group got upset at the predicament their friend was in. Hinata stayed quiet the whole time, looking down at her food. What are we going to do? Sakura asked, worried. Yeah, he can barley feed himself, and if any of the villagers see him. Neji said, equally concerned. At this, Hinata finally broke her silence as she broke down into tears, crying about what had happened to Naruto. The girls all moved over to her to try and comfort her. Shoo, Hinata, it'll be alright. Of everyone here, you need to be the strongest for him. You're the one that found him and the one he seemed more comfortable with. I'm sure Tsunade-sensei will figure out a way to help him, we just have to get him back to Konoha. Sakura said, trying to reassure her. But after that, what? Neji asked, worried. I mean, he can't stay in his apartment or have a henge on all the time. Wait, why can't he use a henge? Choji questioned this info. The others looked shocked. Why hadn't they just have him use henge until they saw Tsunade? I don't know. I'll ask Gaki about the henge when he returns and about a place to stay. I know of one, so that isn't the problem. Jiraiya told them. Then what is? Shino asked. The problem is he can't stay by himself. Like Kyubi told us, with his emotions all screwed up, he needs someone there to keep him in check. Jiraiya responded. So what do you suggest? Lee asked. Right now I only have a theory, but I have to talk to Tsunade when we get back to see if it'll be okay or not. Jiraiya told them. They all nodded in agreement. A little bit later, Naruto still hadn't returned and the group, though worried, started to take turn on watch duty. It was Team Kakashi's turn when Sasuke heard a noise and threw a kunai in the direction. In an instant, a chakra paw came out of the darkness and caught it in the air before it hit its target, flinging it back at the owner. Sasuke, seeing this, caught the kunai and pocketed it back in his pouch, knowing whom it was now. Geez, Teme, what's got you so on edge tonight? Naruto whispered, annoyed at being Sasuke's practice dummy, coming into the clearing. Naruto, where have you been? Kakashi asked, concerned about where the boy had been for so long. Went for a walk, Naruto responded, smiling, walking over the nearly non-existent campfire. Really, Naruto, where did you go? Kakashi asked again, not believing what he said. Naruto sighed. I went back to the hideout to see if Kyubi and I could find anything about the jutsu he used on me. But that is a day away. How did you get there and back so fast? Sakura asked, confused now. Oh, I used a jutsu arrow Sennin taught me. It's really cool. Helps with getting away or coming on targets fast. Naruto explained, smiling at them. Naruto, what's the name of this jutsu? Kakashi asked, intrigued. Arrow Sennin said it was called Shushin no Jutsu. Naruto responded and yawned. I'm really tired, is it okay if I go to sleep? Sure Naruto, go to sleep, we'll wake you before we leave, Kakashi said, trying to hide his surprise at what he was just told. Naruto nodded and went to a nearby tree and jumped into one of the lower branched. He then placed his back against the trunk and fell asleep instantly. Kakashi-sensei, do you know the jutsu Naruto's talking about? Sasuke asked. Not only do I know it, I also know its creator. He was my former sensei. Kakashi said, chuckling slightly. So? Sakura asked, hearing his amusement at the jutsu. That jutsu was created by Arashi Kazama, otherwise known as the Yondaime. Kakashi said, looking up at Naruto. The others looked at Kakashi in amazement and then at Naruto. They both smiled at the boy in the tree. You certainly are Konoha's most unpredictable ninja, Naruto, Kakashi thought, smiling. In the morning the group was getting ready to head out and Naruto still hadn't woken up from the night before. Hinata looked up in the tree at him, happy he had come back. Sasuke was suddenly by her side, looking up at him too. How long has he been up there? Hinata questioned him. He came back about an hour into our watch. He changed about an hour after that, Sasuke said. The two were looking up, seeing Naruto in his golden kyubi for sleeping soundly on the tree branch. He had jumped to his tails dangling below the tree limb, swaying in the breeze. Jiraiya and Kakashi came up to the two and looked up. So are you going to wake him? Kakashi asked the Sannin. Hold on, Kachiyose no jutsu, Jiraiya said. In an instant Gamakichi was back in front of Jiraiya again. Yo Ero Sennin, did you find the kid? Gamakichi asked, webfoot raised. Yep, Jiraiya said and pointed to the fox in the tree. Gamakichi looked up at the tree in shock. Baka humans trying jutsu they have no business in meddling with. Gamakichi mumbled, so why'd you summon me then? I need you to wake him up, Jiraiya said, smiling. Oh? And why don't you? Gamakichi asked, smiling widely. Don't want a repeat of last time, huh? Jiraiya frowned that Naruto had told the toad about the last time he woke him up. I just think he'd like to see you and you can go back and tell Gamabunta what's happened to him. Oh, I already know what the hubby tried to do just by looking at him. How got his hands on the jutsu is what I'd like to know. Gamakichi said, annoyed, and jumped up into the tree. The two adults were surprised that the little toad knew what Orochimaru tried to do to Naruto. Maybe you should ask Gamabunta about it, if Gamakichi knows, Kakashi said. Jiraiya responded. Gamakichi hopped up the tree to the branch Naruto was sleeping on. Gaki. Oi Gaki, wake up, Gamakichi said, hitting Naruto on the muzzle. Naruto moaned and opened one eye and saw the chibi toad in front of him. Gama. Gaki, wake up, it's me, Gamakichi said, worried at the look that was currently in Naruto's eyes. Naruto started licking his mouth. Jiraiya, maybe it wasn't such a good idea to send him up. Ino said. Hungry, Naruto said tiredly. Well, I'm not on the menu, Baka, Gamakichi said, annoyed at his words. Being called an idiot woke Naruto up further. Ome, I'm not a Baka. Naruto yawned and fully woke up. He smiled at whom he was in front of him. Hey Gamakichi, what's up? Well, you should be, and thankfully I'm still here too, Gamakichi said. Naruto yawned again and sat up. What are you talking about? Is it time to go already? Well, a few seconds ago I believe I was on your menu for breakfast. Also Ero Sennin summoned me to wake you. I don't want a repeat of the last time, Gamakichi said, chuckling. Naruto looked at the chibi toad, surprised at his words. Gomen, about that, I'm still working to get used to this form. No problems, once you fully woke you were fine, Gamakichi said, trying to reassure him everything was all right. Back down on the ground the others heard what the two were talking about. Jiraiya, what are they talking about? Sasuke asked the Sannin. I don't want to talk about it, Jiraiya said, his eyes narrowing and frowning. The group continued to listen to the two's conversation. It was his fault. I was having a very good dream that day and he had to ruin it with dousing me with Mizu. Serves him right, Naruto said. Hop on, I'll take us down. Gamakichi did what the boys said and in an instant they were on the ground with the others. The chibi toad then jumped off Naruto's head as he started to transform back to normal. As soon as he was done he looked Naruto over, shook his head and jumped back on Naruto's head. He then looked down at Naruto. You know, the hubby really shouldn't have messed with jutsus he knows nothing about, Gamakichi said. Naruto looked at him surprised. You know what he did? Do you know how to reverse it? Naruto asked hopefully. Gamakichi just shook his head. Gomen Gaki, all I can tell is what he tried to do, but with the seal it might have caused a different result to happen. Naruto got annoyed that the toad couldn't help him and crossed his arms in annoyance. So you going to stay or go back now? I think I'll stay for a little bit, Gamakichi said, thinking it'd be good to keep the boy company for a while. Naruto nodded. Naruto, Kakashi said to get his attention, we're going to be stopping at a village next. Why don't you use henge when we get close? I can't, Naruto said, heading over to grab a fish on a stick to eat. Nani? Kakashi questioned him. The others hearing Kakashi turned to pay attention to what was going on. I've tried numerous times since I left the hideout to engage it and I just can't. Naruto said, biting into the fish. What does Kyubi have to say about it? Jiraiya asked, concerned at this new information. He thinks it might be another one of the side effect of the messed up jutsu. Naruto said. Well, if that's the case. Kakashi said and handed Naruto the cloak. I know. I just wish I had something better than this thing that smells like rotting flesh. Naruto said, his face twisting in disgust at the smell as he placed the cloak on. Naruto, Sakura said loudly. Nani? It's the truth. Hinata took it off of a skeleton that was in the cell the hubby had me in. Naruto said, looking at the girl. He grabbed Gamakichi and had Hinata hold him till he got the hood up and placed him back on his head again. The group then headed out through the trees with Naruto staying in the middle of the group. It's not like him to be this quiet, Kiba said, and Shino nodded in agreement. Just let him be, Hinata said. In the meantime, Naruto wasn't really being quiet, he was actually conversing with Gamakichi, but his voice was so soft that the chibi toad was the only one that could hear him. So what do you think, Gamakichi? Naruto asked, looking up at his companion. About what? Gamakichi asked. Naruto lifted his paws to explain what he meant and Gamakichi just shrugged his shoulder. You're still you, aren't you? Yeah, Naruto said, sounding sad. So then what's the problem? I know your emotions are on the fritz, your chakra is on the blink for certain things, and you look a little different. Gamakichi said. Naruto raised an eyebrow and snorted at his words. Okay, a lot different, and sometime it takes time for you to recognize people you've known your whole life, but you're still you. The jutsu didn't work and that's all that matter. Gamakichi said, hoping his words would help. Now I just got to figure a way to change back. Naruto said, annoyed at his situation. Have you asked him? Gamakichi looking down at the boy's face. You mean Kyubi? Yeah, he knows a little, but he also needs to talk to Oba-chan to see if his hunch is correct or not. Naruto said. I think checking the Hokage would be good. Is he giving you any problems? Gamakichi asked. He actually been rather helpful. He says it from the merging where he's gotten some of my emotions and memories. Naruto said but paused. You think differently? Gamakichi asked at his pause. Naruto shrugged. I don't know, it just seems he more worried about me than he should be, even if the jutsu caused us to share emotions. Gamakichi just smiled at the boy who looked up to see his face. Nani? Naruto said, feeling the toad amusement. It seems this has made you think things through thoroughly, not just jump into it like you normally do. Gamakichi said. Naruto looked at him annoyed. It might be Kyubi causing that than me. Or maybe it's the you've been hiding from the others. Gamakichi said. Naruto growled and frowned even more at his statement, knowing what he meant. Okay, I'll end it. Gamakichi said, feeling the boy's annoyance. Soon the group reached the village and entered the hotel they'd stay at. The senseis told the groups to go to their rooms and placed their stuff down. They were then all to meet in the adults' room. Once they all got into the room, a couple of them talked about where they'd eat and started to leave to head out and find food, but were stopped by Jiraiya and Kakashi. Wait, where do you think you're going? Jiraiya asked, seeing a couple of the teens start heading out the door. To find dinner. Why? Ino said, looking back at the Sannin. Jiraiya and Kakashi looked at Naruto, who was sitting on the bed with his cloak off talking to Gamakichi, still his arms waving around a bit. Oh, Ino said sadly, knowing he couldn't go out in public. Naruto patted the chibi frog on the head and suddenly Gamakichi disappeared and Naruto looked at the other, oblivious to what had just happened. Huh? Why's everybody so upset? Naruto asked, smiling, confused at why some looked sad. Naruto-kun, we're going to go get dinner. Is there anything you want? Hinata asked, trying to change the room's mood. Naruto said, then looked at his paws, trying to figure out what he could eat. Onigiri would be good. Alright, Hinata responded, smiling, and left with the others. Jiraiya and Kakashi still hadn't left though and looked at the boy. Going to stay with me till one of them comes back? Naruto asked. The two nodded and Naruto sighed. Alright. Naruto said and turned to look outside to see his friends leaving the hotel to go eat. Kyubi, is this how I'm going to have to lie from now on? Having others go get me stuff and confined to a room. Naruto thought sadly. Kid, we'll find a way, and when we do you'll be stronger than ever. Kyubi said, smirking at his words. Naruto smiled at his response. See how the fox was trying to cheer him up. He just continued to look out the window at the people walking below them. About 5 minutes later, to his surprise, he saw Hinata returning with a large basket in her hands. He saw her enter the front door and disappear. Without moving from his spot, he spoke, Kakashi-sensei, open the door. Kakashi did what he asked, and in that instant Hinata was standing there with a shocked look on her face that they knew she was coming. He saw you though the window. He hasn't left that spot since you all left. Hinata, are you going to stay here? Kakashi asked her. Hinata nodded at his words. Alright then, Jiraiya and I are going to head out to grab something to eat then. Have fun you too, Jiraiya said, smiling and winking at Naruto and exiting the room. Baka Ero Senin, Naruto said, annoyed. He then turned to Hinata, who was blushing like a ripe tomato. Hinata-chan, are you alright? Raising his paw to feel her forehead. I'm alright, Naruto-kun. Hinata said as she reached into the basket and grabbed some onigiri and sat them on the bed. I didn't know what kind you like, so I bought a number of different ones. Arigato, Hinata-chan, Naruto said, smiling at her kindness. Hinata, finally realizing Naruto was using chan at the end of her name, caused her to blush even more. Naruto grabbed one of the onigiri and started to eat it. Hinata then pulled out some cups and a thermos. She poured green tea into the cups and sat one near Naruto and one near herself. The two sat in silence and ate for a number of minutes when finally Naruto spoke. Hinata-chan, Naruto said, stopping to get her attention. This caused Hinata to look up at the boy, who was looking down at the tea swirling in the cup. Arigato, Naruto said, glancing quickly at her. For what? Hinata asked, confused. Naruto paused, closed his eyes and shook his head. Never mind. Kid, why don't you tell her? Kyubi asked, annoyed. He didn't tell her what he was actually feeling. It doesn't matter, Kyubi. Naruto answered the fox. Kyubi snorted at his answer. The demon knew what she meant to him. The two finally finished eating as Naruto lay down in the bed to sleep. Hinata got up and went to a nearby chair and sat there watching Naruto's sleeping form. A couple of minutes later, Kakashi and Jiraiya came in with some food. Hinata put a finger to her lips and the two men nodded in understanding. They sat the food down and exited, followed by Hinata. How long has he been asleep? Kakashi questioned once they go outside. About 30 minutes now. When will we head out? Hinata asked the two. First thing tomorrow. Head to your room, the other girls are already asleep. We'll see you in the morning, Jiraiya said to her. Hinata nodded and headed to her room. Suddenly the door in front of hers opened and Sasuke stuck his head out. Hinata, how is he? Sasuke asked, worried. He's sleeping now. I brought him some onigiri and stayed with him in the room. At least he can eat something, Hinata said, a hint of sadness in her voice. Well, the dope needs to eat something else than ramen every day, Sasuke said, smirking, hoping his words cheered her up. Hinata giggled at his statement. Oyasuminasai, Sasuke-kun, Hinata said. Sasuke said and shut his door. Hinata opened hers to see all the girls were indeed already asleep in their respected beds. Hinata went to hers that was right by the window that has a full moon brightly shining in on the sleeping group. She got into her bed and glimpsed at the moon for a few minutes and then fell asleep. Naruto, time to go, Kakashi said, shaking the sleeping boy. 5 more minutes, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said, rolling over on his back, his arms flopping out. Kakashi smiled with his eye at the sight of the boy. It then struck him that this image seemed familiar. He then thought back to when he was a genin to a day he had to wake his former sensei for one of their missions. Kakashi just stood there surprised at how much the boy looked like him in that instant, but Kakashi shook his head. He couldn't. Arashi-sensei never had children, Kakashi said to himself out loud. Jiraiya heard his words and snored at his words. Kakashi heard his reaction, but thought he just wanted to leave. He then picked the boy up and hauled him to the bathroom. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Jiraiya warned him as he passed him. Kakashi looked at him and smiled, turning the water to the shower on. What the hell? Naruto screamed as the cold water hit his body. Kakashi-sensei. The next instant Kakashi was pulled into the shower and Naruto was standing where Kakashi was a moment ago. He looked on at his sensei angrily at what he had done. That's not nearly as bad as what Eros Sennin did to me, but it's still close. Naruto though seen his sensei getting wet in the tub. Payback time, Naruto said, his old prankster grin returning to his face and a mischievous glint in his eyes. Kakashi looked up at him, worried about the look on the boy's face. Naruto went through a number of hand seals. He then performed an ice jutsu that caused the water to turn into ice-cold rain and ice cubes as it came down on the sensei. Kakashi's eyes went wide as the ice-cold water and ice cubes hit him. Naruto walked out of the bathroom annoyed that he was dripping wet and awoken in such a way, but also smirking at paying Kakashi back for what he did. Geez, I just asked for a couple more minutes. Is that so hard to ask? No, my clothes are all wet. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. You're lucky I didn't pay you back too much, Naruto said angrily. Jiraiya was over by the door trying not to burst out laughing. Naruto looked over at him, hearing his telltale giggles. Eros Sennin, don't you start or I will repeat the last time you tried to do something similar to that on me. Naruto, what did you do to him? Kakashi asked as he stepped out of the shower completely dry. The two were shocked he was able to change that quickly. The two looked at each other at the man's question. For my own safety and Eros Sennin's, I'm not at liberty to say, Naruto said as blue chakra surrounded him. As it died down, the two noticed Naruto's clothes were now dry. Gaki, what was that? Jiraiya asked, curious as to how he had just dried off. Kitsune no Hi, Naruto told him. But how? Jiraiya asked, confused. Our mind merged. I know his knowledge, his knows mine. Well, what he chooses to let me see. Good benefits that don't help the bad ones, Naruto said, waving his paw in the air, starting to pack up the few things he now had. Well, we'll see if Tsunade can fix that, Jiraiya said, hoping to cheer the boy up. Naruto nodded and put his cloak back on and headed out to meet the others. As the group was finally together, they headed out again. About halfway there, Naruto and Akamaru picked up an unusual scent. Kakashi-sensei, there are people heading our way, Naruto said, Akamaru barking in confirmation to Kiba. The group scattered and hid in the trees. Suddenly the group appeared and the Konoha nins noticed they were Oto nins. Naruto's eyes went red for a second as he and Kyubi growled at the sight of the village symbol. The Oto nins though didn't notice it and continued on. They're heading straight for Konoha. We need to stop them, Lee said to the others. Kakashi and Jiraiya nodded to them and the group started their attack. As some of the team dropped down and the other threw weapons, but they were all deflected by the Oto nins. Jiraiya and Kakashi were staying by Naruto. I have a feeling we're going to have to help them, Kakashi said, looking at how the fight was going. I think you're right, Gaki, I want you to stay here, Jiraiya said, looking at the boy who was watching the Oto nin angrily. Hearing this brought Naruto out of his anger and looked over at Jiraiya. Dimu, Naruto whined at the news. Naruto, do it. I don't know what will happen if you get into a fight right now, Jiraiya said, not wanting the boy to argue with him at that time. Naruto hung his head and let out a frustrated sigh and nodded understanding. Good, Jiraiya said as the two jumped down from the trees to help with teens. Naruto stayed up in the tree watching helplessly as his friends struggled against the group of Oto nins. They're Junin rank, maybe even Anbu. This isn't good, Naruto said to himself. He jumped down to help, but Jiraiya saw this. Gaki, stay there. Naruto stopped and stood by the tree watching the scene in front of him. His paw that was on the tree pushed into it, causing it to splinter from the force of his frustration at not being able to help his friends. Each team was dealing with their own Oto nin, while Kakashi and Jiraiya had one to themselves. Kakashi and Jiraiya were fine, but Kurenai's team and Asuma's were having a little trouble. Sasuke and Sakura were able to get hits on their ninja, but it didn't seem to faze him, while Lee just dominated the ninja they had with his incredible speed and taijutsu. Naruto looked back at Kurenai's and Asuma's team. Not good, not good, Naruto repeated, worried about his friends. I agree, Kit, some of them are in trouble, Kyubi told the boy. In an instant Hinata tried to attack, but was kicked in the stomach and sent flying back. Hinata-chan. Naruto shouted, frightened, as he jumped and caught her before she could hit a tree she was fly towards. He looked down to see blood coming from the side of her mouth and her breathing shallowly. In that instant he saw the image of her at the preliminaries of the Chunin exam. Jiraiya, who had temporarily disabled his ninja, came running over to Naruto and Hinata. "Naruto, is she alright?" Jiraiya asked, worried about how hard the girl had been hit. "Jiraiya-sensei, get everyone out of here." Naruto growled through his teeth. Jiraiya was shocked the boy used his name and not the nickname he loved to use. "Naruto, what are you talking about?" Naruto looked up at him from under his hood, his eyes glowing not red, but purple. "Jiraiya-sensei, get everyone out of here. She's hurt and they're going to pay for what they did. If you thought my four tails was bad, you sadly mistaken. 'Cause like this I'm much more powerful." Jiraiya looked at the boy and saw the rage swirl in his eyes. He then took the girl from Naruto's arms and jumped into a nearby tree. "Everyone make a run!" Jiraiya shouted. "Demo?" Kiba asked and then saw Hinata. The group took to the trees except for Naruto. Sasuke looked back to see him still standing there. "Naruto, come on!" Sasuke shouted to his teammate. Sasuke, let's go, we need to leave now," Jiraiya said, seeing the boy had stopped to wait for Naruto. "Demo?" Sasuke said and looked at Naruto. "He told us to go and we need to get as far away as we can." Jiraiya told him. He nodded and then headed off, glancing back at his teammate and brother they were leaving behind. "Go, Aniki, I don't know if you'd be safe if you stayed here," Naruto thought as he saw the group's retreating forms. "Look, they left the weakling to finish us," the Auto leader said, laughing. Naruto said calmly, his hood covering the rage that Jiraiya saw in his eyes. "Nani?" the man asked, raising an eyebrow at Naruto's words. "The reason they didn't want me to fight is they didn't know how I'd react to it," Naruto said, pulling down his hood looking at them. The Auto nins all gasped at the face they saw. "Bakemono," one Auto nin whispered. Naruto smirked at his words. "Will you have your former Otokage to thank for my appearance?" "Former?" another ninja questioned. Naruto nodded. "Hi, former. As in he is no longer in the realm of the living. To be blunt, he's dead, killed by his former apprentice Uchiha Sasuke." "You lie," the leader said, not believing the boy's words. "What do you think was in that bag he was carrying around with him?" Naruto asked the man, smirking. In a clearing about a number of miles from where they last were, the group of Konoha nins minus Naruto was there. "Chikasue, why did we retreat?" Sasuke asked Jiraiya angrily. "Because Naruto told us to," Jiraiya said as he had Sakura check Hinata over. "Why would he want us to leave?" Lee asked, confused. "I'll tell you all word for word what he said to me. And I quote, Jiraiya-sensei, get everyone out of here. She's hurt and they're going to pay for what they did. If you thought my four tails was bad, you sadly mistaken. 'Cause like this I'm much more powerful. First off, Naruto never uses my name unless he's dead serious about something, and second, he told me about the four tails. Believe me, we don't want to be there when he goes critical." Jiraiya told them. "All because of Hinata?" Choji asked, looking at the unconscious girl, surprised he would get this upset over her getting hurt. "I think if it had happened to any one of you, he'd be doing the same thing he's doing right now," Kakashi said. Jiraiya nodded in agreement, looking down at the girl. Sakura finished her scan and smiled up at the man. "She'll be alright. I think she just had the wind knocked out of her." It was then Hinata started to moan and wake up. "Naruto-kun," Hinata said softly and looked around, noticing they weren't where they once were and Naruto was nowhere to be seen. "Where is Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked, worried, struggling to get out of Jiraiya's arms. "Hinata, he's..." But before Kakashi could continue, a huge killing intent swept over the group. It was so powerful as cause a couple of the teens to be knocked down. Jiraiya was putting Hinata down a few seconds before it hit, looked at her. "That's where he is," Jiraiya said, looking back in direction they had just come from. It was then Naruto's cloak came floating by and Hinata grabbed it and hugged. "Naruto-kun, please be safe." At the same time, the Konoha nins had stopped in the clearing. Naruto was getting ready to start his fight. Back at the clearing right after the Konoha nins had ran off. "Your former leader tried to control me and my power, but what he unleashed unto this world is Otto's worst nightmare," Naruto said angrily, pulling his cloak off. In that instant Naruto roared as released all his chakra and Kyuubi's chakra, this causing his cloak to be lifted into the air and go flying off in the direction of where the Konoha group was. It sent a wave of killing intent so great it went on for miles. Most of the Auto Nins were now trembling with fear from the teen in front of them. He stood there now surrounded by chakra that looked like a fox with 9 tails, and his eyes were purple in color. The next instant he was gone. Everyone watch each other's back. The Auto Nin leader shouted to his team. The ninjas all formed a circle with their back to each other and weapons drawn. Instantly one ninja was hit and skidded a little bit away from the other, then another and another. He's trying to separate us. Stay in formation. The leader told them, trying to keep them in formation. I'd leave now and go back to Auto if I were you. Naruto voice carrying through the tree, so the Auto Nin couldn't tell where he was. Never, we have orders from Orochimaru-sama and we will carry them out. The leader said, looking around trying to pinpoint the teen's location. I told you he's dead and soon you will be too if you don't do as I say. Naruto's voice echoed, annoyed at the man's stubbornness. Bakemono, I don't believe you and I will kill you and complete my mission. The leader said, confident he'd win. A blurry image of yellow was finally seen through the trees, jumping from branch to branch for a brief second. The one ninja, which had taken on Guy's team, saw this through a number of weapons where he believed Naruto would be next, only for them to hit a tree. He then saw a number hit a yellow streak, but the next second the weapons were flying directly back at him. Your aim's a little off. I might have to let you talk to a friend of mine that specialized in weapons, but then again if you won't leave it might not help you. Naruto spoke. In an instant 2 giant chakra paws emerged from the ground and pulled the man under, but instead of doing Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, the paws continued to pull the man until he reached the user. Naruto smiled at the man that hung upside down in his paws, fear apparent in his eyes. Here, catch, Naruto said. The next instant the man was being thrown through the air, watching shocked as he closed in on 2 of his teammates. As he flew towards them he hit them in the stomach. Because he was flung facing them and they were holding weapons, one pierced his heart, killing him instantly, while the other was embedded in his stomach. Leave now, Naruto warned the group again. The 2 ninjas, whose weapons had killed the own member, were behind Naruto in an instant. Die. The 2 shouted angrily at the boy. Naruto looked behind him, shocked. The 2 were able to sneak up on him, but his shock soon turned to a smirk as 4 of his chakra tails caught the men in midair and hauled them up further into the air. The first set of tails on one man threw him towards a nearby tree. His back hit the tree directly, which caused his mouth to open and blood came flying out as he slid down to the ground dead. The other man, seeing this, stared shocked at what happened to his comrade and started to fight the tail's grasp. He managed to pull out a kunai and started to stab the tails wrapped around him. Even if the tails were made of chakra, Naruto could still feel the pain the kunai caused him. He flinched at the pain and he looked back at the Auto Nin, squinting his eyes. I'd stop that if I were you, Naruto told the panicking ninja. But the Auto Nin continued to stab the tail over and over. Naruto growled angrily, finally having enough pain as his tails threw the ninja back. He also released the ninja harder than the first at a tree that was directly behind him. He hit the tree so hard it actually caused him to snap into spewing blood onto Naruto's back. Using the flying blood as a distraction, the leader threw a number of weapons at where Naruto was, only for him jump into a tree limb nearby. Naruto crouched on the limb looking at the 3 Auto Nins that were left. You really think you can kill the vessel of Kyubi? Don't make me laugh, Naruto said, his eyes flashing crimson, and disappeared. The other 2 Auto Nins paled at this news. In the next second the leader was fighting the teen at amazing speed. They were using purely taijutsu because both were too close to use anything else, but Naruto has his paws. They exchanged punched and kicks, but no one was able to land a hit. They even managed to include a couple kawarimis in the fight, that is, until the leader left an opening allowing Naruto to attack. Using his claws he slashed the man's chest, causing blood to fly out and onto Naruto. Naruto moved back a little. Give up, Naruto said, trying to get what was left of the group to run away. The leader looked down at his bloody hand and then at the boy, shocked he was able to land a blow on him. Never, the Auto Nin leader responded. 3 of your men are dead, how many more till you realize this is useless? Naruto tried to reason with the man. We will all fight you to the end, Bakemono. If one of us can survive to carry out Orochimaru-sama's order, that will be enough. The leader said, not budging from their orders. I'll give you credit not being deterred from the objective the Otokage gave you, but he's dead, not, and it's pointless to carry out the mission now. Naruto spoke to the remaining ninjas. Even if he's dead, we will still carry out our orders till we are told further. The leader said. Fine, then you're all dead. Naruto said, annoyed that they wouldn't retreat. In an instant Naruto was gone. The leader's eyes grew wide as he looked in every direction to see where the boy was going to attack from. The next instant he had a shocked look on his face as he started to falling apart limb by limb. The two auto nins that were left were standing still, scared at what they had just witnessed. They couldn't see where their opponent was, and he had just killed their leader without any trouble. Instantly Naruto was in front of one man. His eyes bore into his. Kibatsu o Zigoku Kyu, Naruto said. The next second the man that was next to him saw the other start to be covered the claw marks and started to scream in pain. He started to gurgle up blood and fell to the ground dead. Naruto then moved over to the last man and grabbed him by his vest and lifted him off the ground. Now tell me what you were doing heading towards Konoha. Naruto said, looking at him wanting answers as to what was so important they wouldn't retreat. I don't know what you're talking about. The last auto nin said, scared as the boy's power. Naruto looked at him annoyed, seeing that he was lying to him. He took his free paw and grabbed the auto nin's right arm and squeezed, hearing the bones break and release. The man screamed from the pain he was just given. You're lying. Now will you tell me? Naruto asked again. I tell you I don't know. The man said, breathing hard from the pain coming from his arm. Naruto shifted the man in his arms and broke his other arm. Again the man screamed out in pain. I'll ask again. What were you doing heading to Konoha? Naruto said angrily, his eyes glowing bright crimson, getting annoyed that the man continued to lie to him. I don't, the man started, but was dropped abruptly to the ground. In that instant two of Naruto chakra tails came from behind him and hit his leg, breaking them at the same time. The man's screams were heard all the way where the Konoha nin were. What the hell? Kiba said as the screams echoed through the forest. Naruto. Shino said. You mean that was Naruto? Neji asked, concerned that he was hurt. It's his doing. Shino explaining further. A number of the teens gulped at this knowledge. The two adults threw each other worried looks at this. Back at the clearing, Naruto was crouched in front of the man, his chakra tails twitching behind him wildly. Now I'll ask you one more time and then you will join your friends. I assure you, Naruto told the man who was crying from the pain he was now feeling. We were sent by Orochimaru to be spies in Konoha, that's why we were heading that way. We were to infiltrate the village and sent information back to Otto. He was then going to attack again, but if he's dead then it'll never happen. The Otto nin finally told the boy. Naruto snorted at this. He picked the man up with his tails and headed through the trees to the others. Finally sensing he was near, he released his chakra and walked into the clearing, dragging the injured and scared ninja with him. The group gasped at how he was covered with so much blood. Here, Naruto said calmly, looking at Jiraiya, and dropped the man off in front of him. He has information Oba-chan will want to hear about spies in Konoha. I'll be back in an hour. Sakura ran up to him, worried that the blood covering him was his. Naruto, are you alright? Naruto looked at her and smiled. Yep, I'm fine. With that, Naruto walked past the shocked group. He walked a little bit as he reached what he was looking for, a lake. He then proceeded to take what was left of his shirt and pants off and placed them on the side of the lake and entered it with his boxers still on. Even as he entered the lake, the blood started to wash off of him, leaving a trail of red in the water. As he walked further in, he saw a rock that was protruding out of the water further out, and he walked over to it and proceeded to clean the caked blood off of his body. Back with the group, a number were still in shock over Naruto's appearance. Hinata, though, was looking in the direction the boy has walked off to. Suddenly she started to run in the direction he went. Hinata-sama, Neji said as the girl disappeared into the forests following Naruto. Let her go. Jiraiya spoke to the boy. Oni, the Otto nin left alive repeated over and over. Oh, shut up you. He wouldn't have done it if you would have told him what he wanted to know. I know he gave you ample of time to tell him, so shut up. Jiraiya growled, panicking man below him. Jiraiya-sama? Tenten questioned. Even if he looks like that, he still hates to kill. You could see it in his eyes when he dropped this baka off. He always gives them a chance to run away. If he does capture them, he'll give them chances to tell him what he need, and if they give it to him, he'll let them go. I can only assume by the way he looked when he came in here, none of they ran, and this one refused to give him the information he asked him about. Jiraiya explained to the others Naruto's reasoning. Is it wise for Hinata-sama? Neji asked, still worried for the girl's safety. Neji, he wouldn't hurt any of us. She'll be fine. She'll probably be able to help him. Kakashi said, smiling at him. I believe she's already started with that. Jiraiya said, picking the Auto Nin up and carrying to a nearby tree to tie him up till the two came back. Back by the lake, Naruto was sitting on an underwater rock washing off the caked blood that was on him. Chikasu, this stuff just doesn't want to come off. Naruto said, annoyed. He had been rubbing his arms for many minutes and the blood just stayed there. It was then Hinata arrived, watching Naruto in the lake try to scrub off all the blood that was on him. She noticed his tattered clothes over by the lakeshore and that they too were soaked in blood. She went over to them and sat his cloak down and grabbed the garment. She then went the edge of the lake and bent down and started to put the shirt into the lake, turning the water red. She then started to scrub the shirt on a smooth rock and wring it out. After a couple of minutes the shirt was blood-free. She looked up to see Naruto was still rubbing his paws on the blood on his arms, trying to get it off. It finally started to loosen and come off Naruto's fur. Naruto let out a laugh in triumph as the blood started to come off. She smiled and then grabbed his pants and proceeded to wash them off too. As she got rid of the blood, she heard Naruto start talking. He's probably talking to Kyubi again. Hinata thought as she stayed silent and listened to the part of the conversation she could hear. Kyubi, was I right in what I did? Naruto questioned sadly. What do you think, Kit? Kyubi asked, not wanting to annoy the boy at the moment. I don't know. Naruto said, sighing and starting washing the other arm off. Tell me, Kit, what would they have done if you hadn't killed them? Kyubi asked the upset boy. Probably find the others and kill them, or enter Konohas as spies like they were ordered to do. Naruto answered the fox's question. Right, so if you hadn't dealt with them then they would have hurt the village either way, right? So you were protecting your village in a way. Kyubi said to the boy. But I still don't like what I did. Naruto said sadly that he had to kill. In my book them it means you are still human, Kid, unfortunately. Kyubi said, now messing with the boy. Ome. Naruto said, annoyed the fox was messing with him again. But he smiled sadly at his reply, seeing that the fox was trying to make him feel better. Naruto got back to finishing the removal of the blood left on him. When he did finished, he turned around to be faced with Hinata sitting by the lakeshore. Hinata-chan? How long have you been there? Naruto asked, shocked as he moved back to shore. Long enough to clean your clothes off and hear you talking to Kyubi. I hope you don't mind. Hinata said, looking at the ground, afraid he was upset at her for hearing his worries. Naruto smiled at the girl kindness. I don't mind, I just didn't hear you, that's all. I must have been too caught up in my own thought. Hinata looked up at the boy and nodded. She then looked over at the dripping wet clothes that hung on a low branch. I was able to get the blood off your clothes, but they'll be wet for a couple of hours. Oh, they'll be fine in a minute. Just watch. Naruto said, smiling as his hand started to glow blue with what looked like fire. Kitsune no Hai. Naruto then flung the fire at his clothing. Naruto-kun, what are you doing? It's going to burn it. Hinata said, shocked by his actions. She started to run at his clothing only to have Naruto grab her arms and stop her. It's alright really, Hinata-chan, look. Naruto said, stopping the girl as she looked on, amazed at what she was seeing. As Hinata looked at Naruto's outfit, she noticed it wasn't being burned, but noticed it was becoming dry. She then looked at him confused. It in Kitsune Jutsu. It's hard to explain in ninja terms, but it like a combination of a Gen Jutsu and a Kaden Jutsu. Naruto said, releasing the girl's arms. Okay, go on. Hinata said, still standing watching the jutsu in action. Well, it heats like a Kaden Jutsu, but it doesn't burn the person you use it on, they just thinks they're in intense heat so they freak out. Naruto explained. But how is that drying your clothes? Hinata asked, now even more confused. Even if the heat isn't real, it can still be felt by other people and object. Thus it's drying my clothes. Naruto said, smiling. Finally the blue fire diminished and Hinata walked over to the clothes. She touched them and noticed they were warm to the touch and completely dry. Naruto-kun, that's amazing, Hinata said as she handed the clothes to the smiling boy. Yep, Naruto said, smiling. He then proceeded to put his shirt and pants back on. Hinata then handed him his cloak and the two headed back to the others. So are they mad at me? Naruto asked as they walked back. Who? Hinata questioned, looking at him confused. The others about what they saw. Naruto said softly, looking at the ground. I don't think so. I think they were just shocked you came back looking like that and we just. Hinata stopped, not wanting to continue. You thought I wasn't capable of it? Naruto asked, looking at her, an eyebrow raised. Hinata nodded at his words. Naruto chuckled at her admission. Hate to tell you guys, but I've been capable of that since I returned from training with Ero Sennin. I just really don't like to, as I'm sure you heard. Naruto said, smiling at her admission. The two continued talking about different thing and they finally made it back to the others. About Dame time. Jiraiya growled at Naruto's return. Oh, shut it, Ero Sennin. A number of the teens gasped at his words. You're just mad because you had to babysit the blubbering ass of an Auto Nen. Naruto said, pointing to the ninja that started to freak out again when he had returned. Jiraiya snorted at his reply. Well, now that you're clean, can we go? What about him? Shikamaru asked, pointing to the Auto Nen. I'll go on ahead and inform Hokage-sama you're coming and take him to Ibiki. Kakashi said, walking over to the Auto Nen. The man who had calmed down over the last couple of minutes worked himself into a frenzy again hearing Konoha's famous interrogator's name. Tell him I said hi. Naruto told Kakashi, smiling. Kakashi walked over to the ninja and placed a hand on his shoulder, and in a cloud of smoke the two were gone. We'll let us head home. Jiraiya spoke as he started into the trees. With that, the group started to follow him into the trees. Before Naruto and Hinata did though, Naruto raised his hood and nodded to Hinata as they moved to catch up with the others. The group has finally reached the front gates to Konoha. The two guards on duty came down to the group. Team Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, and Guy returning from their mission. Jiraiya said to the two Chunin. Hi, Jiraiya-sama, it's good to see you back. Welcome home. Hokage-sama asked to see you once you returned. One ninja said to the Sannin. Jiraiya nodded as the group started to move though. The other guard though stopped the cloak figure that was with the group. Who are you and state your business? The other ninja said, suspicious of the figure. He held his hand up to stop him from proceeding further with the rest of the group. Jiraiya heard this and turned his head to look back to see what was going on. That's my apprentice Uzumaki Naruto. He is with Team Kakashi. The ninja that stopped the teen and eyed him angrily, now knowing whom it was, but allowed him and not want to make Jiraiya angry. As he passed the man, Naruto's head went down. Hinata, Sasuke and Sakura, who were behind Naruto, saw this. As the two girls went on ahead, throwing a quick glare to the man, Sasuke was the last to enter. Hey, Sasuke said, getting the mont's attention. Hi Sasuke-sama? The ninjas said, smiling at the Uchiha. If you have a problem with my Oto-Uto, take it up with me. Sasuke said unemotionally, but flashing his Mangekyo for an instant. The two men's eyes widened as they were instantly transported to a red and black realm and then were instantly back facing Sasuke. They nodded at his words as he walked off to join back up the group. What was that, and how does he consider that Bakemono his Oto-Uto? The one ninja questioned the other ninja. You don't want to know where we were just sent to, and we're lucky that we only got a glimpse of that place. Also, Uzumaki-san is the one that brought him back. I wouldn't get on either one's bad side if I were you. The other ninja replied, jumping back to his post as the other watched the group walk through the streets of Konoha. When Sasuke caught up to the group, he noticed Naruto has his head down and walked over to his side. Naruto? Sasuke questioned the boy. You don't have to stick up for me, Sasuke. Naruto said, looking at him smiling. Sasuke looked at him, sad at his so-called little brother's words. As the group walked through Konoha, they noticed a number of the villagers stop and watch them and also look at the cloaked figure with suspicion. Naruto, feeling the tension he was creating, started to get nervous. What's with me? I'm so nervous, all I want to do is head back to the woods for safety. Naruto thought. Hinata, seeing his body tense, came over to him and wrapped her arms around one of his covered ones. He looked down at her and smiled. Her touch has caused him to instantly relax. Arigato. Naruto whispered so only she could hear. Hinata nodded at his words. They continued to go through the village and went through the market district. With the people all around them and even with Hinata's constant contact, he started to get nervous again. He started to jump and look in the direction of every loud noise. Also, he started to shake so bad that Hinata could feel him quivering with fear. Naruto-kun, Hinata questioned, worried at the boy's reactions. I hope we get here soon. Naruto said, trying to hide how nervous he really was. Hinata though was able to figure out how he was feeling and looked over to Sakura. Sakura-san, Hinata said, and Sakura came up to Hinata. Could you stay with Naruto-kun? I need to go talk to Jiraiya-sama. Naruto-kun, I'll be back in a minute. I promise. With that, Hinata left Naruto's side and ran up to Jiraiya. Sakura looked over at Naruto, noticing he was shaking and had instantly tensed up greatly as soon as Hinata left his side, and she could also tell he was looking around rather frantically. Jiraiya-sama, Hinata said loudly, getting the mont's attention. Jiraiya looked back to see the girl running up to him. Hinata, what's wrong? We need to get out of here now. He's very nervous. I don't know how much longer he can hold being in the crowd. Hinata explained to him as she finally got up to where the man was. Alright, we'll head there by roof then. Jiraiya said as he suddenly jumped to the nearest roof. Soon the others followed Jiraiya's lead, not knowing why they were going by rooftops. Hinata came back to Sakura and Naruto and nodded to the girl, who nodded back and left Naruto's side. As the two jumped to the rooftop, Naruto instantly relaxed again. Arigato again, Naruto said, letting out a sigh of relief, though he is still shaking. What happened? Hinata asked, confused at his reaction. Naruto shook his head. I don't know, I just started to get nervous when I was surrounded by so many people. But you've been with us and haven't had a problem, Hinata said. Maybe it was because we were in the wood, with more space, and I didn't feel like I was being trapped. Naruto said, not understanding what happened. Hinata nodded. That would make sense if he has become more animalistic. Soon they reached the Hokage Tower and jumped off the last roof to enter the front door. Mind telling us why we did that? Ino asked, annoyed that they had traveled by rooftop and not finished walking through the marketplace. Jiraiya looked back at Naruto. The others turned to his gaze to see the boy was still visibly shaking, even with Hinata holding his arm. Naruto, Sasuke said, getting the boy's attention. Naruto looked up at him and smiled nervously, trying to hide what was wrong again. The group sighed at this. With that, they headed up the steps to the Hokage's office. Izumo and Kotetsu were on duty and smiled as the group came up to the door. She's been waiting for you. Hitaki Kakashi's in with her right now. Telling her what he knows, he arrived and took the Auto Ninyu captured to Ibiki. Kotetsu told the group. Jiraiya nodded and opened the door and had the group go in ahead of him. Make sure no one enters unless I or Tsunade tell you it's okay. Jiraiya told the two guards. Hi, why do you go so rough on that ninja, Jiraiya-sama? Izumo asked. I didn't touch him, Jiraiya said as the teens went into the room. Then who? Kotetsu asked, confused. Naruto, was all Jiraiya said as the last of the group walked in, and he then followed into the room and shut the door behind him. The two Chunin looked at each other, surprised at the Sanin's words. Do you think? Kotetsu asked. I don't know, I know something happened to him, but if he released Kyubi. But then again, he is Jiraiya-sama's apprentice, Izumo said, and Kotetsu nodded at this. Inside the office, Naruto had finally stopped shaking and was standing as far back as he could from Tsunade. Namekuzi Oba-chan, Naruto said, smelling Tsunade's scent. Hinata giggled at his words. Hi Naruto-kun, she is that. Just don't let her hear that. Why, that's what Oba-chan is anyways, Naruto said, now realizing who she was. I'm glad, Hinata said. Why? Naruto asked. It didn't take you that long to recognize her, Hinata said, smiling at him. Oh good, you're here. Kakashi was just telling me what happened with Orochimaru, Tsunade said. So he's telling you how I kicked his ass? Jiraiya asked, smiling, thinking she'd believe his word. Tsunade punched him for his lie. Baka, he was telling me how Sasuke-kun kicked his ass with his Mangekyo. With my what? Sasuke shouted, surprised at this news. Naruto again flinched at the shout. You didn't even know? Kakashi asked, amused at the new. Sasuke shook his head wide-eyed at this, and Kakashi chuckled. Well, this is interesting. We were running around for 2 weeks and you didn't know you had activated it? Yeah, it happened right after Naruto disappeared. When you said you were going to bring him back just like he did for you. In that instant your Sharingan changed to Mangekyo, Kakashi explained to the boy. So it changed because he was worried about Naruto? Tsunade questioned. To protect a loved one. Thought I could have told him that, but it's more fun to let them figure these things out on their own, Kakashi said, smiling with his one visible eye. Why outa? Sasuke said, walking towards his sensei, but was stopped by Sakura. Flashback. Sasuke, Jiraiya, and Kakashi had just left the group, which went to search for Naruto to go find Orochimaru. Sasuke walked for a number of minutes as they finally reached a door with 2 pillars on each side with an angry snake statue wrapped around them. Yeah, you wouldn't know this is his room, Jiraiya said sarcastically looking at the giant statues. With that, Sasuke opened the door to see Orochimaru sitting with his back to them looking over scrolls that were on his desk. Sasuke-kun, so good to see you. Have you decided to come back to me? Orochimaru asked without turning around. More like to retrieve my student hubby and kill you, Jiraiya said angrily. Orochimaru, shocked by Jiraiya's voice, turned around quickly to see him face with the 3 Konoha nens. Jiraiya, I'm sorry to say you can't have him, the Kyubi is mine now, Orochimaru said smiling. Naruto's is not yours to keep as a pet or to control, and I'm here to make sure of that, Sasuke said angrily. Orochimaru slowly got out of his chair and stood before the 3. Oh, and you 3 think you can kill me? No, actually I think Sasuke can handle this alone, Kakashi said smiling, leaning against the wall. Orochimaru raised an eyebrow at this. Oh really? I taught him everything he knows, Kakashi-kun. How is it he will be able to kill me? Oh, he has some new tricks up his sleeve, Kakashi said casually, as he stood there unmoving. Sasuke proved to us, to Konoha, and to Naruto that the Uchiha clan is still strong. Sasuke looked back at him and nodded, getting into his fighting stance and turning his Sharingan on. But as he did that, Orochimaru stood stunned at what he saw. But how? Orochimaru asked, shocked at what he saw in the boy's eyes. In that instant, Sasuke's Chidori impaled him and he stumbled back from the wound to his stomach. How did you? It's not possible, Orochimaru said, shocked at the boy's Sharingan. But Sasuke was so intent of killing the vile snake he didn't even hear what he was blubbering on about. Orochimaru looked over at Kakashi, who was still smiling. Ome, Orochimaru said angrily. Kakashi shook his head smiling. Actually, you're the one that caused it. There is another way to advance it. Caring, truly caring for a loved one, be it family or not, Kakashi said, and pointed to the man. You Orochimaru, in kidnapping a person his considers his Oto now, is the one that released it. Orochimaru stood there stunned at the man's words. Sasuke came up and hit him a number of times with taijutsu attacked. Orochimaru then started fighting back and hit the boy, causing him to fly through the air and slam against a weapons rack that was in the room. A katana fell in front of Sasuke's hand and he reached out and grabbed it. Orochimaru, this ends now, Sasuke shouted as he ran towards the man. He tried to change the teen's course with Senai Jashu, but Sasuke just dodged each snake as he sped towards the man. In a second, Sasuke was gone and reappeared beside Orochimaru in mid-jump. He then slashed the katana and caused his head to go rolling the ground. The body then collapsed on the floor and bled out. Sasuke headed over to the man's bed and took off a pillowcase and gabbed his head and placed it inside. Sasuke, what are you doing? Jiraiya asked at the boy's actions. Proof for Hokage-sama, he's dead, Sasuke said calmly. Let's head out to see if they found Oto and head home. End flashback. Anyway, here, Sasuke said and produced a large bag, which Naruto growled at. What's this? Tsunade asked as the bag was placed on her desk. Orochimaru, Sasuke said casually. Kai, Maru? Tsunade questioned. She then looked at Kakashi. But I thought you said he was dead? He is, Kakashi said smiling still. Tsunade looked at him and then at the bag, then realizing what they meant. What the hell? Kakashi, is that what I think it is then? Kakashi, still smiling, nodded. Any why in the 7 hells did you let him bring me that? You think I want that? Tsunade asked, motioning to the bag. Kakashi shrugged at her question, still smiling. Proof he really is dead. Tsunade sat back in her chair, placing a hand on her head and rubbed her temples. Alright, so where's Oto? Tsunade asked, changing the subject and also worried about what Orochimaru had done to him. Jiraiya, who had now recovered, looked at the group. Gaki, get up here. Naruto shifted. He did not really want Tsunade to see him, but knew it had to be done. Naruto-kun, Hinata said, and he looked at her. I'll go up with you. If you like. Naruto nodded. That would be nice, Hinata-chan. With that, the two walked from the back to the front of the office. Tsunade looked questioningly at the cloaked figure, which she could only guess was Naruto. Gaki, why do you have the cloak on? Tsunade questioned, confused at his appearance. He didn't tell you? Jiraiya asked, shocked, looking at Kakashi. I hadn't gotten that far, Kakashi said, smiling, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. Tell me what? Tsunade questioned the two men. What the hubby did to me, Oba-chan. Naruto said, explaining to the woman. What did he do? Tsunade asked, shocked. Kakashi hadn't told her this first and looked over at the man, annoyed that this information wasn't told to her first. Naruto, show her. Jiraiya said, getting tired to the questions. Naruto replied, folding his arms in front of him. Gaki, you not helping. Jiraiya said, annoyed but smiling at him. I want Iruka-sensei here too. Naruto said, determined to get what he wanted. What about our sensei? Kiba asked the unmoving boy. Naruto looked at them and nodded. Alright, everyone's sensei's an Iruka-sensei, but that's it, I don't want any elders or anyone else. At least not right now. Naruto said. Jiraiya and Kakashi nodded and Tsunade sighed. Alright, since you won't tell me what happened till they come, what can I do? Kakashi, you go get Iruka, Shino get Kurenai, Neji find Guy, and Shikamaru you find Asuma. Be back here in 5 minutes, got it? Shikamaru and Kakashi. Tsunade said. The people nodded and they left. 5 minutes later the groups were all back except for Kakashi. When he gets back, Tsunade said, angry the man was late, but was stopped by a cloud of smoke in her office. Gomen, it's my fault, I had to get someone to watch my class. Iruka apologized. It's alright Iruka, at least it wasn't his fault this time. Tsunade said, glaring at Kakashi. Iruka nodded and stood with Kakashi. Tsunade-sama, why did you ask us here? Guy questioned. Actually it was Naruto who wanted you here. I am still in the dark over what's going on. All I know is Orochimaru might have done something to him. Tsunade said. It's not might, Oba-chan. Naruto said, pulling down the hood, it is. The adults that had been brought in gasped at his looks and Tsunade raised her hands to her mouth. Oh Oto. Tsunade said, upset at what she saw. Gaki, finish it. Jiraiya told the boy. You mean there's more? Asuma asked, shocked. Mendoku's hubby. Shikamaru said so the others could hear. Naruto then pulled off the cloak to reveal what he looked like entirely. Now do you see why I had the cloak? The sensei stood there in shock at what they saw. Iruka was hit the hardest by what Orochimaru had done to the boy. He went over and stood in front of Naruto and Naruto looked up at him smiling, but his former teacher could see the sadness in his eyes. Iruka then bent down a little and engulfed the boy in a hug. It's alright Naruto, we'll find a way to help you. Iruka said, hoping his words would comfort the boy. Naruto hugged the man he considered his father back and nodded as his words. He's right Oto, there has to be a way to change you back from whatever Orochimaru did. Tsunade said. Well, if you want to know more I can let you talk to Kyubi. Naruto said. Is it safe? Kurenai asked. As safe as I am right now. Naruto said, looking at the woman. Well, if we were Otto Nin, that's not saying a lot, Naruto. Kiba said, and was knocked out by Sakura and Ino for his comment. Don't listen to him, Naruto. Sakura said, hoping Kiba's words wouldn't affect the boy. Naruto eye dimmed for a second, but he smiled at her to assure her he was all right. What did happen and why was that Otto Nin so injured? Tsunade asked, wondering why the ninja was brought in such bad shape. They were coming to infiltrate Konoha to be spies for Orochimaru. The others, they engaged them while I was told to, stayed out of it. Naruto started to explain. Why? Asuma asked, not understanding why the boy didn't help. Ero Sennin wasn't sure how to react during the fight. But as I watched I saw Hinata-chan get hurt and I was able to catch her before any more harm to come to her. I kind of snapped. I don't know if it's because one of my friends being hurt or from what Orochimaru did to me. But I had Ero Sennin get them all out of there and I fought them alone. Naruto explained to everyone. Tsunade had raised an eyebrow at Naruto, calling Hinata-chan. Yash, the power of youth. Guy exclaimed excitedly. Anyways, I pulled out my chakra and fought them mostly with pure speed and brute strength. That's how I killed the first 3. The leader I killed with my claws after we fought with taijutsu for a number of minutes. The other one I used a jutsu I have from Kyubi's memories, and the last, well, he's the one that Kakashi-sensei brought back. Naruto told them. But his injuries? Tsunade questioned. I asked him what they were up to and he refused to tell me. It wasn't until I broke both arms and legs that he finally told me. Naruto said calmly, but sadness could be seen in his eyes. The adults stood there shocked. This boy was able to fight 6 men on his own without any trouble. So do you want to talk to Kyubi? Naruto asked, smiling. Tsunade sighed and nodded at her response, and instantly Naruto changed into a golden one-tailed fox with blood-red eyes. The fox sat down and bowed its head to Tsunade. "Hokage-sama," the fox said respectfully. "Kyubi, I presume?" Tsunade asked, and the fox nodded. "Can he be changed back?" "Hi, but the hubby used an ancient jutsu and did the last two hand seals wrong. Thus I believe causing the effect in the boy's appearance, erratic emotion, and why he can't use certain jutsu." Kyubi explained. "What was he trying to do?" Asuma asked. "The jutsu is called Zinrui no Kisu." Kyubi said. Tsunade gasped at his words. "Ah, so I take it you do know of it then. I would expect the Hokage of Konoha to know of this jutsu. But how did he manage to find it? It's a kinjutsu and the only place it's located in is the Forbidden Scroll, and it's still in the secure vault it's been in for the last 4 years. Tsunade said. "Well, maybe Shikamaru started, everyone turned to look at him. I'm just guessing, but what if this wasn't the first time Auto spies have been in Konoha? What if he had some come earlier and copy the jutsu he wanted so that no one would know the scroll was gone and search for it?" Tsunade nodded. "That would make sense, but how did they get the hand seals wrong if they copied it directly from the scroll?" Kyubi shook his head. "That I don't know. Maybe we should look at it." "One more question, Kyubi," Tsunade said. "Go on," Kyubi said. "Why the one tail and not 9? She questioned him. "My tails show how much power I'm using at the time, and since I'm only talking to you I need not use any of my power, correct?" Kyubi explained. "Hi," Tsunade said. "I'm going to let the kid come back and just tell him what to say." Kyubi spoke. Tsunade nodded at this, and the boy changed back into his humanoid form. "Alright, Oba-chan, you want me to get it?" Naruto asked. "Go ahead," Tsunade said, annoyed. "Wait, how does Naruto know where it is?" Ino asked, confused. "Who better to hide it than one that's been able to steal it before?" "Oji-san's idea," Naruto said, looking over his shoulder, smiling. He walked over to the wall under the Hokage's portraits and hit a number of selected spots. The wall then flung open, revealing a scroll room. He then walked down the hall and pulled out an old-looking medical scroll and walked back out. "Naruto, that's not the right scroll," Tenten said. "Says you, when I was able to steal this sucker 4 years ago, Oji-san put a genjutsu on it to make it look like normal medical scroll," Naruto said and handed it to Tsunade. Tsunade removed the genjutsu and opened the scroll up. "Alright, Oto, what he was supposed to do was Hitsuzi, Uma," Tsunade said, looking at the jutsu last 2 hand seals. "Hi," Kyubi said. "He did Hubby and Inu though," Naruto said. Tsunade just couldn't understand. How could they get the last 2 hand seals wrong if they were copying this jutsu? She looked all over the scroll and then saw it. The jutsu before has its last 2 seals as snake and dog. "That's what happened," Tsunade said, shocked. "Nani?" Jiraiya asked. "Look," Tsunade pointed to the jutsu before. "They mixed up the 2 jutsu, that's why it didn't work. Those bakas, but this is a good thing. Now that we know what they did, we just need to undo it." "So what did the jutsu he do on me end up happening?" Naruto asked. "Well, the Zinrui no Kisu is supposed to make the person that it was used on completely void of all emotions and basically a killing machine," Tsunade said. "And who was the baka that created that?" Ino asked. "The evil man from back when the Shodai was Hokage. Once they found out what he was doing, they placed the jutsu here and erased the man's memory so he wouldn't be able to use it anymore," Tsunade said. "And the other jutsu?" Choji asked. "It is called Seishin no Ziko o Bakuru," Tsunade said. "But how could those 2 mixed together cause what it did to Naruto?" Neji asked. "The Seishin no Ziko o Bakuru causes the target to have their inner self revealed to them. In Naruto's case, since he hold Kyubi, it show him, but since the 2 were combined, it's a little bit of both. But at least the Zinrui no Kisu didn't work completely and wipe his mind void of emotions," Tsunade said. "But what about him not being able to use henge?" Sasuke asked. "That the work of the Seishin no Ziko o Bakuru, it can't be removed until the user removes it from the enemy," Tsunade said. "Well, that great, I can't change back because the hubby's dead, and since my and Kyubi's emotions are combined along with mine on overload," Naruto said, annoyed. "Oto, what are you talking about?" Tsunade said. "I wanted to talk to you about that and some others thing alone. I think he should head home. Do you have the keys?" Jiraiya asked. "Are you sure? Do you think he's ready to know?" Tsunade asked, worried. "After everything he's been through, yeah. Jiraiya said as he was handed the key to Naruto's new house. Excuse me, but I can't go home. Hello, look at me. Naruto exclaimed, waving his arms in the air. You're not going to your apartment, Gaki, you're going home, and there's a difference. Jiraiya said, annoyed. Are you sure? Tsunade asked again. Look at him. If they see him they'll kill him on the spot, no questions asked. If he's there he'll be alright. No one goes up there and he has it so secluded you have to have been there before to know how to find it. Jiraiya said. Tsunade nodded at his words. Kakashi, Iruka, I want you to take Naruto to his new home. Tsunade said. New home? Everyone asked, surprised. Gomen Tsunade-sama, but there are no new homes in Konoha. Actually all the home are occupied, so what are you talking about? Kakashi asked. There is one home that isn't occupied and hasn't been for nearly 16 years now. Jiraiya said, smiling. Kakashi's eyes widened knowing what his was talking about and then narrowed. I'll take him, but you and I are going to have a talk about this later and about why I wasn't told. Kakashi said angrily. I figured as much. Jiraiya mumbled. Okay, everyone head home, you have a while to rest before I send you out again. Kakashi, Iruka, you're to stay with him until we come. Understood? Tsunade said. The two nodded their heads as Naruto put his cloak back on. Kakashi-sensei, where are we going? We're taking you home, to the house that was left to you by your Atu-san. Kakashi said. My Otousan. Naruto said, surprised. Kakashi nodded, but Iruka could see the anger in the man's eyes. I'll have to ask him once we're away from Naruto. With that, Kakashi headed off with the two following behind him. As each of the Chunin 9 and Team Guy headed home, each headed straight to their room for a long rest to restore their body and let what happened to Naruto finally sink in. But as Neji was able to head to his room without Hiashi seeing him, Hinata wasn't so lucky. Masumi, Hiashi said, stopping her before entering her room, how did it go? Hiashi asked. We were able to kill all of the Akatsuki Atu-san. Sasuke-kun even killed Itachi. Naruto-kun ended up being the one that killed the leader. Hinata said. Then why did it take you so long to get back? Hiashi asked. Hinata's eyes started to tear up at this question and shocked Hiashi. Masumi, what happened? Hiashi asked, worried. Orochimaru. Hinata said, tears starting to flow down her face. Hiashi was wide-eyed. The missing Konoha nin had been there. He walked over to the girl and led her into his study to talk. Tell me everything, Hiashi said as he slid the door shut. Hinata then told her father everything that had happened, knowing his father didn't hold any hard feeling for Naruto. Hours later, Hiashi exited the room carrying a sleeping Hinata in his arms. He looked down at her, shaking his head. Her face was still red from crying so much about what had happened to the blonde ninja that had helped their family. He laid her in her bed and shut the door. I must go talk to Hokage-sama. There has to be a way to help him, Hiashi said and left the Hyuga compound.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.